Say what's up to YouTube today.
I just think we need to kill them, every one of them, and that's it. And if not that, because the country will not let that happen, the government. Just the least we can do is just kick them out of our land, because this is our home, this is our land, and we deserve it.
Yeah, I think colonialism gets a bad rap. Like, genocide is bad, but colonizing places that are genocidal and they have bad ideology, it's good to come in and correct their views.
Sound like you're advocating for ethnic cleansing?
I don't think so, because Palestinian isn't an ethnicity, it's an ideology, and it's an ideology that says that they want Jews dead, and so we want them as far away from Jews as possible.
As the Israeli military begins its third attempt at ethnic cleansing northern Gaza, Israeli civilians are preparing for their shot at capturing real estate. You would assume that because everything we're about to look at is in violation of international law, that they would be conducting these meetings in secret. They are not meeting in secret, though. In fact, they are openly advertising it, broadcasting it in the media, and doing so with direct support from the Israeli government. Last week, Daniela Weiss hosted this event in Masaf Habazak, just miles from northern Gaza.
Do you feel like this is your political moment?
It's not a moment, it's the beginning of an era.
Weiss is one of the heads of the Nakala Settlement Movement, a West Bank settlement group, comprised of and endorsed by some of the most powerful people in Israel. And this group has turned its colonizing gaze to the settlement of northern Gaza. From a young age, the children of these settler movements are brought up to believe that Gaza is their rightful home, and that there's only one way to reclaim this home, which is by cleansing it of the Palestinian people already living there.
When you have a cut in your body, and that cut, it has an infection. You have to take out the infection. When you take out the infection, then it'll be clean again.
There's a concerted effort in Israeli media to try to portray these settlers as some kind of extremists, ones that adhere to a fringe ideology. However, among Israelis, the idea of settling the Gaza Strip is becoming increasingly popular.
There is some reliable polling that suggests that between 25 and 40% of the population here supports some form of settlement inside Gaza. The awful trauma of October the 7th attacks have pushed those figures towards the upper end.
I love the implication of what he said there, which is that ethnic cleansing is some kind of trauma response, as if their genocidal ideology would be fixed if they just went to therapy. Unsurprisingly, this push to settle Gaza also has a lot of support from within the Israeli government. Itamar Ben-Gvir, Israel's Minister of National Security, is the strongest ally of this new settler movement. To give you an idea of the type of guy Ben-Gvir is, as recently as 2020, he had a portrait of an Israeli mass shooter hanging in his home, Baruch Goldstein, perpetrator of the Ibrahimi Mosque massacre in 1994 in Hebron, where he walked into a mosque and shot and killed 29 Muslims worshipping there. This guy is who is hanging on the Minister of National Security's wall. Also, apparently 10% of Israeli Jews think that Baruch Goldstein is a national hero. There's a fun fact for you, I guess. So what would these future settlements look like? And for that, we can look to the West Bank, where there already exists hundreds of illegal settlements, where they are bulldozing Palestinian homes to replace them with Israeli ones every year. In the past year alone, almost 1,700 Palestinian homes were destroyed to make way for more Israeli settlements. The destruction of these homes, while sometimes done under the auspices of building code violations, is generally done by armed Israeli settlers themselves, often with direct protection provided by the IDF. Armed settlers, with the active participation of army units, repeatedly cut off road access and raid Palestinian communities, detain, assault, and torture residents, and chase them out of their homes and off their lands at gunpoint, or coerce them to leave with death threats, while blocking them from taking their belongings. These attacks aren't new and have been happening long before October 7th. According to Human Rights Watch, settler attacks on Palestinians increased in 2023 to their highest level since the UN began recording this data in 2006. And again, that was before October 7th.
This video shows Israeli settlers attacking Palestinian olive pickers and destroying their property, beating and chasing them from their fields. Ilham shows me where settlers have put straw in her family's trees. They use it to set light to them, Some are hundreds of years old. She says settler attacks have increased since the start of the war.
The level of violence has increased. They've stopped even talking to us now. They just come and beat us. Some open fire, killing people. There is no way they will ever entertain even the thought of a mutual understanding between us.
One of the latest victims of this conflict, not killed in Gaza, but a hillside village in the West Bank. Grief and anger after a 23-year-old Palestinian was shot dead by Jewish settler extremists as they attacked the community of Jit last night.
To make this clear, if you are an Israeli, you can gather your friends, go to the West Bank, and commit whatever atrocities you'd like. Seize homes, shoot at families, burn fields, and you will more than likely have full protection from any repercussions, and in addition, full military support. Settler attacks are rarely even acknowledged, let alone punished. This sort of violence and expansion is viewed as more of a feature than a bug of the Israeli state. The more Palestinians they drive off the land, the more settlements can be built, thus increasing the chances that Israel can expand its borders. It has taken decades of international pressure to even begin to apply generally meaningless sanctions to settlers, like freezing their American bank accounts and barring them from business dealings in the United States. The government itself is taking steps to accelerate this process. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich recently demanded Israeli sovereignty over the entire region at an Israeli conference for American evangelicals. Israel must free itself from wrong concepts and make an unequivocal Israeli statement to the Arabs and the entire world that a Palestinian state will not be established through the establishment of new cities and settlements deep in the West Bank and bringing hundreds of thousands of additional settlers to live in them. This sovereignty would allow Israeli control over Gaza for an indefinite and inevitably endless period of time. Just like in the West Bank, settler terror mobs would descend on the Strip in an attempt to strip the last shreds of dignity from the Palestinians living there and clear space in the rubble for more, newer, illegitimate Israeli real estate. This open violation of international law is only possible because each time the Israeli government moves to further legitimize these settlements, the United States, its most powerful ally, makes empty appeals to its concerns while taking no tangible or material steps to actually stop them. None of this would be possible if not for direct support from the United States, with groups like Keep Israel Safe, who fundraise for these settlements and send it to Israel directly.
Nahalal gets support from a number of groups in the U.S., including AFSI, Americans for a Safe Israel, which co-sponsored a recent webinar on the return to Gush Katif.
There's few things I can think of that are less safe than setting up a neighborhood illegally in an active genocide zone. In a way, this could also be understood as settlers acting as human shields for the IDF. The closer and sooner these settlers can move towards any of the fighting, the more of an excuse they have in their minds to ethnically cleanse Palestinians further and further south. This movement is supported by wealthy Americans, but according to Vice, their anonymity must be protected.
There is a very strong support from very prominent, from very, I would say, wealthy people, wealthy Jews.
In the U.S.?
In the U.S.
Can you name any names?
No, I cannot. No.
I would be willing to guess that this protection is less about hiding their support for the Zionist project, and more that they are violating international law by funneling money directly into groups that build these illegal settlements. And again, to get an idea of the types of people we're dealing with here, the funds raised by these groups don't just go to the settler movements, they also go to the IDF and the sniper units specifically. This is probably the most direct way you can send your money there to kill kids, given the IDF snipers' long and storied history of clear, deliberate targeting of civilians. This past year, you saw dozens of doctors all report multiple instances of treating children that had been shot directly in their hearts and skulls. That's the snipers, and that's what these people are funding. Unfortunately, it's looking like these settlers might have their way, as Israel's general's plan for northern Gaza is currently in full effect, despite the US's impotent gestures to withhold military aid if they did it. The safety of the people living in Gaza has reached an all-time low, and it's only going to get worse. The general's plan also ramps up Israel's intentional starvation efforts to an extreme degree. Hundreds of trucks have already been turned away daily by the Israeli blockade. And then days ago, you saw that UNRWA, the largest organization providing that aid, was banned from operating within Israel by the Israeli government. This move has been described by human rights groups as a death sentence for the people still alive in Gaza. 83% of required food aid does not make it into Gaza, which is up from 34% in 2023. This reduction means people in Gaza have gone from having an average of 2 meals a day to just 1 meal every other day. An estimated 50,000 children aged between 6 and 59 months urgently require treatment for malnutrition by the end of the year. It is becoming increasingly likely that Israel will remain unimpeded in its mission to ethnically cleanse the north of the Gaza Strip, and in doing so, clear the way for settler access to Lebensraum and the expansion of its illegal occupation. In 1948, the State of Israel was established after over 700,000 Palestinians were ethnically cleansed from their land and homes, in what's known as the Nakba. These settlers have for the past year consistently and publicly called for a new Nakba, and unless the world does something to stop it, they will get what they want.
Sorry. How's it going? Let's see. I just saw a special about a group of billionaires that hired specialists to figure out how to keep their staff under control in the bunker during end times. And the consultant said earn their respect. He was fired. Yeah, I think something I was watching that came up where it was like the topic of, asking specialists, like climate scientists, like, hey, where can we go when climate, and it's like, well, how are you gonna, like basically the conclusion was, if you think that you will be able to like enslave enough staff to sustain your life that won't actually like eat you, you're mistaken. What's up, APC? How
Hello
you doing?
there.
Welcome in. You're from Australia? That's cool. I have a distant cousin who lives in Sydney. Plays in the orchestra, or used to. He's probably retired by now. Okay, so the next one I had up is pretty depressing. I think I'm gonna skip around. I'm like, this story is rough. Let's check this out.
Welcome to The Tea with me, Dr. Miriam Francois, a new show where we go behind the headlines with leading lights across the globe to explore the burning issues facing us all right now. The show aims to flip the script on current affairs with real talk, real people, and real discussions. So let's spill the tea. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Yumna El Said,
So Life says yes. There's also no way to really maintain their life like a private jet during end times. Right. There's also no safe place So they buy multiple locations. It's delusional. Yeah, yeah. We're all fucked. Climate change is gonna come for everybody. Oh, I'll give you follow. Follows are free. What does Scout have to say? Scout did some digging, I see. Hiya, I'm Scout, a sweet little fox. APC Net, sorry if I said that wrong, seems to be all about that Fortnite life on PS5. They haven't shared much about themselves yet, but maybe we can catch them live and find out more. Until then, let's keep an eye out for their next stream. Apparently that's Scout's voice. Hiya, I'm Scout. A sweet little fox. Well, Scout, we still have Scout, but like it only does like one shout out every like 30 minutes, I think. Unless you pay for it. And I was paying for it for a while cuz you can like do it like as cheap as like $4 a month. But I'm like I don't know. I don't like having to pay monthly for things that I use for stream. I gotta figure out how to cancel Streamlabs since I'm not using it anymore because I figured out how to multi-stream on OBS. Because that's like $20 a month. But I do fork over for YouTube Premium. You know, I do. I can't have the ads. But I'm like, shouldn't that be like a tax write-off? Because I need it for my job. It's frostytools.com. Lainey was doing that too, I think. What is going on right now? Oh, I was mimicking Scout. But yeah, if somebody clipped that, you know, fine, I guess. Lainey was doing that too, I think, not like those guys yesterday. I'm not sure what you mean, Christina. Oh, paying for the bot. I know what you're saying. Or do you mean Streamlabs? Oh yeah, so Lainey was using Stream Elements, which is the Zionist one. Streamlabs is a different one, but I think there's something problematic about them too. Like Lainey says that they steal art, like the art that they use for like all their, like I don't know, maybe they don't pay their artists or they like source their stuff properly. I'm not sure. So yeah, I mean it's Stream Elements, Streamlabs, Stream Bot, Stream Butt Muncher. You know, there's a lot of them. And the only thing that I have to use Stream, like, and there's no option. Scout requires Stream Elements, but he doesn't take any money. Like, I have it set up so that like I don't get tipped through Stream Elements. I still get tipped through Streamlabs though, so they get a little like penny every time. But I would rather, I mean, if I have to pick, I'm like, at least it's not the Zionist one that's like headquartered in Tel Aviv. So it's very difficult to untangle ourselves financially from the Zionist entity. Oh yeah, what happened to Buttbot? There was a Buttbot. TBH Streamlabs isn't awesome either politically, although it's better than Stream Elements. Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at, but I'm not sure exactly what it is that they've done. You know? We should have a tip command on YouTube. If not, we should make one. I think the Vanguard set, yeah, that was in the either in the Olay video or in the like the Anna or Ethan Klein one. I'm like, we've actually watched the Vanguard guys a couple of times over the last few weeks. And then yesterday we had John Ross on the show, and he's a friend of Gavin's, so you know, small world. Oh, it's Snapchat. Like, why's my phone ringing? It's not. It's my sister posting snaps. I think. Yeah. But yeah, it's hard to untangle oneself from all the bad actors. Israel heavily involved itself in the tech sector. Yep. And it's also the small bean thing. Yeah, streamers aren't the ones with all the power. Yeah, you know, like it's the onus isn't and shouldn't be on us, but as you know, leftists, it's important to do the best we can, you know, or at least try. Like at least care, you know, like if I saw like leftist streamers and I'm like, hey, did you know that Stream Elements is Zionist? And they're like, so I could be like, I would be sus about you. Like if people know and still use it, I'm a little sus. But yeah, I do have to have at least an oh, it is 4:20 time. Wait. Let's do that. Let's do that real quick. Yeah, that's fine. To contribute. I mean, you could say something different, but that is the tip one. I got it from my mama. And then we also have Dono. Everything but the tip link. So either just the tip or everything but. Yeah, no, right. That's, yeah, like, knowing, trying to figure out what you're gonna do about it. Like, I get that. Yeah, my family in BDS, like, I'm about to have to make, like, some makeup purchases, and there's, like, a lot of makeup brands that are on BDS. Like a ton. I'm just gonna, sorry, I'm gonna pause this because I don't want to get like, if I'm gonna talk over it, I'll just play some background music that's not gonna get me clapped. You know what I mean? Like, Problemas is like pretty fine, like, but I could still get a fucking ding. Anyway, yeah, like, I have to get some like makeup purchases. Like, I'm gonna need new foundation relatively soon. I need a new eyeliner again. And I'm like, yeah, and like beauty, but so many beauty products and like bath products are like part of BDS, and it's difficult, you know, but it's such a privilege take to have that be our difficulty, you know what I mean? Like, oh, the products I buy, I have to pick different ones. But it's just difficult to know. Like, it's challenging to like know what's on the list, to like remember, like, and then find the products that you want to get, make sure they're not also on the list. Like, finding alternatives is hard. Like, it's easy to find, like, you know, basically the entire makeup aisle, but it's like, how do you, you know? And I think there's an app that I have. I don't think I've used it because I don't go shopping, right? Grab my phone. It's called No Thanks. And like, you scan products and it'll tell you if they're on the list. Oh, do I need to install the QR? No, I think that's just an ad. Oh. Like, let's see if I have a product. Yeah, here I've got like a bottle of ibuprofen. It says this product is good for now. Probably because it's fucking off-brand, or it's Equate. Nice. That was cool. I got a green. My phone's slow. But yeah, so I'm trying to see if this let's see, find products. Or the list. Okay, boycott list. But like, does it give you alternatives? That's what I want. Like, where's the... I don't think it does. But it does tell you instantly if products are on the list or not, just by scanning them. So that is pretty cool. But, and like, all the money goes from Palestinians. The developer is a Palestinian. This is actually really cool. So about us, the origin story. I'm Ahmed Bashbash, a Palestinian developer. I got the idea to help the boycott movement by making an app that helps people to know which products is in, which help people to know which product is in the boycott list. The app idea is so simple, just to scan the product you want to buy and the app would tell you if the product is in the list or not.
I got this idea and I started to make it because I suffered myself from that brutal occupation. I lost my sister in 2020 after a month of suffering of a medical problem. She couldn't get an authorization to go get the medical attention she needed in Jerusalem at the right time. And when she got it a month from trying, she died in the ambulance that was going to the hospital in Jerusalem. Wow. On October 31st, I lost my brother from a random airstrike to 4 civilian houses, which these random strikes were happening a lot. So I decided to finish this app and make it entirely free and unprofitably in behalf of my brother and sister, and any money I will get from the app, I will send it to Palestinian organizations that help people in Gaza. Apparently it's suspended. What is? Yeah, the No Thanks app. Yeah. Let's see. What do you mean? What's this? Oh, you just need to reset my... Oh, your Apple ID. That was suspended. Sorry, trying to follow chat. Urgent update. This is as of May. In light of the ongoing intense bombing in Rafah and for the safety of our team in Gaza, we regret to inform you that the humanitarian aid operations by the No Thanks team will be temporarily suspended. Yeah, I mean, that's not to say that, like, you know, they're the money that dude gets from this app is not gonna go to help people. Yeah, like the app still works, and it's like, this is just about like where the donations go, and this was just about the aid that they were able to do, which is actually amazing that they were able to provide relief efforts. Yeah, we extend our heartfelt gratitude to all who contributed to our relief efforts in Gaza over the past 3 months. Your generous support, we were able to assist over 200 families facing desperate circumstances. We're committed to reinstating our aid initiatives once conditions allow. Yeah, so that's just their aid initiatives in Gaza. It seems from the little about that he's probably in the West Bank. Because they were trying to get an ambulance to get to Jerusalem. So like, I don't know. But either way, it's a good app. And then yeah. The right has an app like this, but it scans to see if a product is woke or not. Yeah, I know. Alright, I can't go to Twitter feed because you never know what it's gonna be. Definitely not TOS safe, but if anyone finds a list or something that has like good replacement products for the BDS list, like what to buy instead, I wonder if like I'm sure that's out there on the internet somewhere.
The Israeli Knesset, the parliament, voted in favor of passed two bills that would basically prevent the UN Agency for Palestine Refugees from operating. What can we say about this move by the Israeli government, what it means, of course, the effects that it's going to have?
You can also NeuroRiot, you could use the bookmarks, right? Like your bookmarks, and then have these, you know? Yeah, as opposed to having to screenshot it and like then bring it in as like an image into OBS file. Yeah. Bookmark them on Twitter. But yeah, I'm like, I would search, but I'm like very hesitant to like even search or scroll on Twitter, especially today. Like, it's gonna be a fucking shit show. What's trending? National Guard. Proud Boys. No, but you could, I mean, you could, yeah, you could bookmark it and then unbookmark them when you're done. That would, you know, keep it a little neater. Opposed to having them. But I think they go in chronological order. Yeah, I can't even hit home. Here, I'll just pull it off screen. Like, let me check Twitter with okay. Let me just give it a good scroll through and we'll yeah, fucking blue MAGA when liberals when Harris has the exact same policies as Trump. Yeah, Streamlabs might have something like that too, but like the games, 'cause they have like promotions and stuff, but I never got into that. Like, oh, buy my meal packages. Oh, that's really funny. Soul Life says, I have an out of context bookmark folder. So one day when I turn on the left, I can make a fake "This is why Sam Cedar is a bad person" video, and it's him, all him saying horrible things. That's actually fucking hilarious. And, like, would just be really funny to do. Just like out of context Sam Cedar, like making like, and just like pretending to be like really serious about it. On Twitter, I started seeing the hashtag Zionist Israeli terrorists. I love that. Yeah.
Accountability.
I can say this is real.
Say it. A woman.
Say it. If they
I will
don't
say it
want
as plainly
accountability,
as I can say
they
it
have to
100%.
carry that rapist baby.
If a woman does not want accountability for her rape, she will carry that baby.
She has to.
She has to, yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, up to 15 weeks.
That's the prop clip I want right
up
there.
to 15 weeks. This is real.
Say it.
A woman.
Say it. If they
I will
don't
say it as
want
plainly
accountability,
as I can say
they
it 100%.
have to carry that rapist baby.
If a woman does not want accountability for her rape, she will
What?
carry that baby.
Accountability for her rape? What the fuck?
And therefore,
They've got to go in. Okay, so if a rape kit,
you're saying I was raped with no proof and no evidence, and therefore I
they've
should
got
be
to
able to
go
terminate
in.
a 6-month
They've
baby.
got to go in within 24 to 36 hours and say to a doctor, "I was raped." And if they don't do that, then they're forced to carry the rapist baby.
Depending on what you want to happen in society, there are things you have to do. Sometimes you may not want to have to do them, but this idea you have that people, what you're proposing is that the state should be able to enforce crimes against people without evidence.
What? Okay, so if a rape kit,
you're saying I was raped with no proof and no evidence.
Who's the victim of the crime?
Community, which has deep and proud roots here in Michigan. And I want to say, this year has been difficult, given the scale of death and destruction in Gaza, and given the civilian casualties and displacement in Lebanon. It is devastating. And as president, I will do everything in my power to end the war in Gaza. To bring home the hostages, end the suffering in Gaza, ensure Israel is secure, and ensure the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, freedom, security, and self-determination.
Not good enough.
We continue to work on a diplomatic resolution across the Israel-Lebanon border
Too
to
late.
protect
Too little, too late,
civilians and
Kamala.
provide lasting stability. And as president, I will work tirelessly toward a future with security and dignity for all people.
I don't know. What do you guys think? Does it matter? Ethan Klein's statement. When I made the show with Hassan, I generally thought he was just a social democrat progressive like myself. I had no idea his politics were so radical, and that's my fault. 90% of the time, he's shitting on Republicans, and that's what I had seen. His politics are like a Trojan horse, a veneer of responsibility with extremely radical views hidden within. The cracks began to appear when we started talking about Ukraine, Taiwan, and Tibet. Once I noticed it, it all began to fall apart. Oh my god. Let's see. Solar says, here's my new hot take. Kamala is like the US version of yeah, how the French left and libs came together. Except it's not happening though. Like, I mean, they actually did. Like, the left and the liberals actually did come together for Harris. Or for the
to defeat the fascist candidate in France, but that's not happening here. They are not, like, they're not reaching out to the fucking left. So, yeah, Emma Vigeland had the same take. What's up, Heathen Granny? Welcome in. Soul Life, what does this have to do with what we're talking about? Hi, Eins. Hi, Samiwa. Okay. Check that out maybe at some point. Oh. Has to do with Ethan. Wrong link. Oh. Yeah, but okay.
Palestinians are taught at 2 years old to kill Americans.
That's pretty spicy.
Yeah. Do we have that one?
Like, come on.
Okay, people, back again with another one. Bonkakat news. And this guy, Ethan Klein of Hehe Productions. I guess we gotta update y'all on this guy, because this guy won't stop.
Production.
Stop, can't stop, won't stop. Take that. No Diddy. The guy hates Hassan Piquer more than he hates Palestinian babies, bro. He made one of the funniest statements I've ever seen on his Insta story, bro. He said, okay, I can't do impressions. I barely know what he sounds like, so I hope this will do, okay? He said,
when I made the show with Hassan, I genuinely thought he was just a social democrat progressive like myself.
What? Yo, wait. Yo. Man thinks he's a social democrat progressive. Ethan on the decline is a social democrat progressive. Now that's news to me. Isn't this the guy who argued with his producer over his right to be a capitalist?
You know, I know that I'm a capitalist.
Man's moving like a capitalism activist and wants people to refer to him as a social democrat progressive, bro. Now that's wild. The only progress you're making is the increasing number of innocent babies your favorite country in the world is murdering. Stop the genocide, you piece of shit. I went too far. I went too deep. Bro, he also said,
I had no idea his politics was so radical, and that's my fault.
Bro, I'm telling you, if you don't already know that Hassan has radical views such as being anti-genocide, pro-universal healthcare, pro-minority rights, high-speed trains. You gotta be lying to yourself. He's not exactly hiding it. He's perving over high-speed trains every single day.
I got us on a train.
Oh, shut the up. That's so cool.
This is okay. I got the best gift.
Are you gonna? Oh, you can put it around your Christmas tree.
Yeah. Oh my god. I'm Muslim, but we'll do that.
I'm Muslim.
Ethan Klein then went on to say,
I hold myself accountable for anyone from my audience that was radicalized by him, which is why I'm doing what I can to undo the damage. I've come to see Hassan as a MAGA for the left, spinning alternate realities to fit his dogmatic view of the world. As someone who has been fighting extremism for many years.
How can you say that? How can he say that?
He said, as someone who has been fighting extremism for many years. He said that, the f you mean fighting extremism? What you mean domestic abuse? Cause the call is coming from inside the house. You are literally married to a former IOF terrorist, and she is married to a Zio NPC.
He's the most pro-Israel president of all time.
It's not good for the movement.
Like, he is insane.
Dude,
Like,
at Israeli, Rudy was saying that Palestinians are taught at 2 years old to kill Americans.
That's pretty spicy.
Yeah. Do we have that one?
Like, come on.
Imagine Ethan Klein of Hehe Productions waking up one day, picks up his smartphone, starts to write an essay on his Insta stories.
I didn't realize I was married to an IOF terrorist. I thought she was a social democrat, progressive except for Palestine, liberal Zio NPC like me. But she was a terrorist. No way. She's a Trojan horse. Just like an IOF instruction for people of Palestine to go north for safety, and then they bombed the north. It wasn't genocide, right? That happens in war, right? 7 decades of occupation, the murder of hundreds and thousands of innocent people, the displacement of millions of people from their homeland, also known as ethnic cleansing, illegal settlements, rape and abuse in dungeons, apartheid. That's normal, right? It happens in war, right? That's not a genocide, right? It's Hamas' fault, right? They are the terrorists, right? Even though Israel, do you love Israel? Terrorists existed way before Hamas. They're not really terrorists, right? The IOF, you can't call them terrorists when they wear uniforms, right? They have a democracy, right? They are funded. The IOF are funded by the most peaceful nation on earth, the United States of America Empire, USA, USA, USA. So surely it's impossible for them to be terrorists, right?
Now get the fuck out of here. Ethan Klein is a monumental bozo. Anyway, so basically Ethan and Destiny, better known as the Karen Vengers, they've been actively trying to get their ex-boyfriend Hassan Piquer banned from Twitch. Hassanabi's exes have unionized to get him banned, pretty much. And Ethan Klein is willing to even ignore Destiny's sussy behavior, such as defending Lolly, which is PDF adjacent stuff that I can't even begin to understand, because the enemy of genocide is our enemy, right? Your enemy is my enemy, and the enemy of genocide is our enemy, right? Fucking Karen Vengers. Zio NPCs gotta stick together, right? I mean, I'll be real. These Zio NPCs, they are either dumb, paid to do the work, or the Zios have some leverage on them. I mean, these people are sussy as hell. Destiny is known to have some sussy PDF opinions. So I wouldn't be surprised if... Take that.
Hello. Yup. Almost like a
whole cloth about her. Hopefully you're not physically sick of it, you're just metaphorically sick of it, but I am a martyr as always. Just like we're martyrs when we watch these shows, I'm also a martyr because I'm getting sick for you. It's not easy.
Well, thank you for your service, Katie. And
Sure.
I mean, I don't think today's show is going to help with your current ailment, but we'll have to power through all these clips we have prepared of corporate news people talking about the election.
Yeah. Which are truly, spoiler alert, sickening.
All right, let's start with Meet the Depressed.
Good Sunday morning from our election headquarters at 30 Rockefeller Plaza
Right?
in New York.
That was really
With just
entertaining.
48 hours until Election Day, the stakes could not be higher in what
We'll
may
get
be
back
the
into
closest
Palestine
election
content
in
later.
recent
We'll take
memory, as former President
electoral
Donald Trump
politics
and
break.
Vice President Kamala Harris promised two starkly different paths for the country.
As president, I pledge to seek common ground and common sense solutions to the challenges you face. I am not looking to score political.
Sorry, I have to just say, I like that. I never thought of this before, but she does wear a nice camel coat. Kamala.
Camel coat, Kamala.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Interesting.
All right. Yeah.
I will say, I've never heard this line before. I will seek common sense solutions. I'm going to find common ground.
Yeah.
It's not like every politician doesn't say this every single time, but
Right.
hey, maybe Kamala Harris really will find the key to common sense solutions.
To comma together.
Ugh, okay.
Sorry.
If she wins president, this is going to be 4 years of this.
I know. That's a reason you don't vote for Harris. If no other reason. I'm just kidding. And you don't know who I'd vote for in a swing state, by the way. I revealed who I'd vote for in New York, but you don't know who I'd vote for in a swing state. We'll get to that maybe later.
I am looking to make progress.
We will not be invaded. We will not be occupied. We will not be overrun.
All right, guys, this is really important. I was on the fence over whether or not we'd be occupied. But according to Trump, it's not going to happen. It's a real relief.
Yeah, this is basically his only message now. He doesn't have anything else to run on except for essentially demonizing immigrants. That's pretty much his main message. He could capitalize, I guess, on the dissatisfaction with an incumbent Joe Biden, but he's all over the place. He can't really stick to one thing, but he does always come back to demonizing undocumented immigrants. That pretty much is the one thing that you can rely on from Trump consistently.
Yep.
On top of talking about himself.
Yeah.
We will not be conquered. We will be a.
Wait, does that mean there's one anti-occupation candidate in the race? Just not the occupation that we're against. That's currently happening in of Palestine.
Yeah, Trump's anti-occupation views do not apply to one of the longest running military occupations in the world, which is Israel's occupation of Palestinians. He's fully on board with that, as we're going to see later.
Yeah, this is the closest we can get to anti-occupation is the non-existent occupation of the United States.
Free and proud nation once again.
More than 72 million Americans have already cast their ballots. 7 states will decide the election, and never in recent memory have the polls been so close in those battleground states on the weekend before Election Day. But will the battleground expand? A shocking new Des Moines Register Iowa poll out overnight shows Vice President Harris leading former President Trump 47 to 44% among likely voters. Mr. Trump had an 18-point lead over President Biden in the state back in June. The startling reversal driven by the gender gap and the strength of independent women who back Harris by a 28-point margin.
Maybe the lesson for Republicans here is don't keep nominating an openly misogynist candidate with a history of sexual harassment and demeaning comments about women, and also don't embrace radical policies on abortion. I don't know.
Right.
Maybe they might learn that from this election.
Good game. By the way, I'm sorry to pause it so early, but a very loyal patriot posted in the comments, 1,100 announced more watching, and only 384 have occupied the like button. That's pretty unacceptable. Let's get it up to 500 right now. That's not even half if we get to 500. And remember, I am calling in for duty while under fire, in terms of health, under health fire.
Like my video
Guys,
too, y'all.
If we can watch these shows, call in healthy while sick. All right, thank you very much. It hurts me more than it hurts you to have to do this. Okay.
Candidates are urging voters to show up.
For those who haven't voted yet, let me just be clear, no judgment, but you still have time.
I've come today with a message of hope for all Americans with your beautiful vote. Oh, we don't want your money. I don't want your money. I want your damn vote.
Now, our final NBC News national poll completed overnight shows the race statistically tied among registered voters, 49 to 49%. Can the vice president hold her ground with Black and Latino voters and deliver a superior ground game? Can she grow Democratic support in the suburbs? And will the issue of abortion power women to the ballot box? Can former President Trump break through the blue wall as he did in 2016 on the issues of the economy and immigration? Can he narrow the margins among Black and Latino voters voters and turn out young men? Will Nikki Haley voters stick with Trump? And if he loses, will the former president accept the results? He still hasn't conceded the 2020 race and is already spreading baseless claims about the 2024 election. Vice President Harris and former President Trump and their surrogates are making their closing arguments.
Georgia.
North Carolina.
If we win Pennsylvania, we're going to win the whole deal.
We have an opportunity.
Remember, Puerto Rican people of Pennsylvania, you have the chance to cost Donald Trump this election. It would be beautiful if he paid for that ridiculous, terrible comedy that he had at his Madison Square Garden rally, which his defenders keep pointing out how many hours before he spoke, that guy spoke, as if he has no responsibility.
How many hours before Trump spoke?
Yeah.
The comedian spoke. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Opportunity in this election to turn the page on a decade of Donald Trump trying to keep us divided and afraid of each other.
Kamala, who's grossly incompetent, broke it. I will fix it.
Donald Trump's a loser in everything that he's done.
You cannot, Kamala Harris, pretend that you had nothing to do with the Biden administration when you are the sitting vice president.
And in many cases, our allies are worse than our so-called enemies.
Day one, if elected, Donald Trump would walk into that office with an enemies list. When elected, I will walk in with a to-do list.
Bam! Wow, that's a killer line right there.
List.
The enemies list versus the to-do list.
Yeah.
Congratulations, whoever came up with that one.
It's almost over, you guys. We have like one more day of this. Comradsky, welcome in. What's up?
Yeah, the list wars.
My problem with Democrats accusing Trump of trying to divide the country, it's true, he is. I mean, his whole thing is based largely on, as we talked about, demonizing marginalized people, especially undocumented immigrants. So fair enough. But I just don't like Democrats claiming the high horse here because, again, I mean, sorry to be a broken record, but they're the ones who spent years claiming that Donald Trump was a Russian agent and everybody who voted for him and not for Hillary was brainwashed by Russia into doing that, which is divisive. That was divisive too. And then also, they did encourage all these prosecutions of Trump. Some of them, I think, had some merit. Others didn't. Like the case in New York where the case he's been convicted of, the campaign finance thing with Stormy Daniels, bringing it years later.
Heard that Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat your. Heard that Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat your. Heard that Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat your. Heard that Saudi Arabia and Russia.
Divisive as well, and also an example of persecuting your political enemies. So I think Democrats, their argument would land better against Trump about him being divisive and vindictive if they didn't exhibit some of the same qualities.
Yeah.
Consider myself to be the father of fertilization. I want to protect the women of our.
Okay, he's the father. Okay, so that's, he's still going with that line.
Christina.
He's the father of
It's a good one.
fertilization.
Happy
Okay,
for you.
I don't think that's going to convince very many people to vote for Trump. Him being the self-declared father of fertilization.
Right. I mean, as we said, I believe when he expressed, I think it was in the same speech that he declared himself the father of fertilization and also admitted not knowing what IVF was. And so that's when we determined he was the deadbeat dad of fertilization.
The deadbeat dad of fertilization, exactly.
Yeah.
Country. I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not.
We have to. Okay, so you may not want to make you may not want to pitch yourself as the candidate for women's rights by saying that you're going to do something without their consent. He doesn't have a feminist on his writing team to tell him that very nuanced point, but if only he did. Yeah, that was not a great line.
To choose leaders who embody the values we seek to pass on to our children.
She's violated her oath, eradicated our sovereign border, and unleashed an army of gangs and criminal migrants from prisons and jails.
Make the margin of victory.
He's saying that Kamala Harris personally unleashed gangs of migrants from prisons.
Yeah.
Like, how did that meeting go with Kamala Harris and the gangs? And and what she's saying to them, like, go and particularly attack Republican states. Like,
yeah.
What's the thinking there?
Maybe he thinks that's what K-Hive is.
The world's most dangerous gang, right there.
They are kind of criminal.
I mean, hey, having interacted with some of them online,
I know
they're not the nicest people in the world. I will say that.
By the way, I think that the best Kamala Harris endorsement so far is Elon Musk endorsing Donald Trump. Such an idiot.
Here he is.
Yeah.
So big that you know what can't happen.
The only thing can stop us is the cheating. It's the only thing that can stop us.
He is the person who stood at this very spot nearly 4 years ago and sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol.
We will never give in. We will never give.
All right, listen, I understand people think January 6th was like the worst thing ever. It wasn't an armed mob. It was a bunch of deluded people, thinking the election had been stolen wrongly, but they weren't armed. Like, this wasn't like this wasn't a coup that the U.S. pulls off.
Right.
In places like, I don't know, Ukraine and around the world. They were actually not armed. And it's just, they love this vision of January 6th, that it was this like armed insurrection. I'm sorry, it wasn't. It was a bunch of really deluded people led by people like the QAnon chum, who was armed with like, his like fur outfit and his Viking hat.
Right.
Not exactly an armed mob.
Loki, what did Max call it? A low IQ riot? Max Blumenthal? Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Back down and
Dude, you got on Leftist Mafia for election night? That's deep based.
we will never, ever, ever surrender.
We begin this morning in the battleground states. North Carolina was the state former President Trump won in 2020 by the smallest margin. And
all right. Well, the table is set for another exciting election. I just hope. Remember last time, it came down to Georgia. There was like there was delayed counting in Georgia, and then there was the runoff votes in Georgia where Democrats took 2 Senate seats. And I just remember all week or whatever, how long it took, it was always Georgia on my mind.
Yeah.
Georgia. So maybe this time we get a different state, because let's change it up a little bit. Let's get a new song for this 2024 campaign. Okay. Well, we're going to just keep going through with this election coverage.
There were I'm getting some pushback, by the way, about there being arms on January 6th. People did have arms, apparently, right?
shore up the blue wall, her simplest path to winning the White House. Nearly 2.8 million people have already cast ballots, and early in-person voting ends today. NBC's Yamiche Alcindor joins us from Detroit. So, Yamiche, what are you hearing from inside the Harris campaign? And I know you spoke with the vice president earlier this week.
Well, good morning, Kristen. From Battleground, Michigan, the Harris campaign is feeling cautiously optimistic as the vice president delivers a closing argument centered both on attacking former President Trump as a danger to democracy and on outlining her optimistic vision for the future. And this week, in an exclusive interview with me, Harris said if elected on her first day as president, she would put forth a package of bills centered on lowering the cost of living for Americans and that the economy will be her top priority.
I made a YouTube thumbnail for election night, but I don't have any one to stream with yet, so I don't know what I'm doing.
While senior Harris campaign officials
feel like everyone's gonna be streaming, so I'm like, I don't know.
Officials say their internal data shows they are winning battleground voters who have made up their minds in the
I
last
don't
week
think I'm
by
voting.
double digits. Still, Harris is doing everything possible to avoid the blue wall crumbling like it did in 2016. Hence today, she's here campaigning in Detroit and East Lansing. A Harris aide also tells me they have a big operation focused on Dearborn, Michigan, which has a significant Muslim community in the state. That source said Harris has, quote, meaningful support from local leaders there and some national Muslim groups. But Harris campaign events have been often interrupted by pro-Palestinian protesters, calling attention to the civilian death toll in Gaza. So there is still a question of whether those voices will negatively impact her by staying home or voting third party. Kristen?
Yeah, the all-important blue wall. Great job getting that interview with the vice president. Thank you.
The all-important blue wall. I loved how she just pivots so seamlessly away from the question of Gaza. And it's interesting that that is not something being discussed on this show at all, on any of the shows, the literal 2 days before the election. You'd think that maybe that would be relevant.
Yeah, especially because the president, the area where...
Yeah, there aren't any ballot initiatives. So, I'm like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I live in a state that's like not, my vote doesn't matter.
Where they have the most power is foreign policy. And
exactly.
Currently, the current
You know, it's
president
probably gonna give it
is
to Jill
facilitating
Stein
two
anyway.
massive catastrophes in Ukraine and in Gaza. But it hasn't really come up. And that's partly because also Trump hasn't really made this a campaign issue because his policies really aren't that different. He doesn't really have any policies. But yeah, the media wants to avoid this because, it's awkward to acknowledge that the U.S. government is currently facilitating a genocide, and neither candidate is willing to stop it.
Gives a fuck.
But yeah, Gaza all of a sudden just becomes about the blue wall. No, it's about a particular segment of the population that could decide this election because they're so...
My microphone is so
upset
busted,
with
you guys.
Biden and Harris facilitating mass murder, but not really a exciting campaign topic for corporate news.
Right.
Okay.
They'd also have to care about Palestinians to think that's exciting.
Yes.
Slightly inconvenient, yeah.
All right. Listen, it's like the last Sunday news day before the election, and the best meet the press could give us is Doug Burgum.
Oh yeah.
Come on.
Oh yeah. Remember him, guys? We barely do. He's like Anne from Arrested Development, and some governor, I believe of a Dakota, was
North
in the
Dakota,
race for about 5 minutes, and then became a Trump surrogate. And right now he's going to be talking about the famous garbage comments made by that comedian about Puerto Rico being garbage in the middle of the ocean. And he will be referring to a comment that Biden made about Trump supporters being garbage. So let's take a look at what he has to say here.
President Trump had this to say back in September on that point about garbage. Listen.
It's not her. It's the people that surround her. They're scum. They're scum. And they want to take down our country. They are absolute garbage.
So, Governor, is it hypocritical to fixate on President Biden's comments,
back,
considering
Dan.
Donald Trump used the word garbage to just...
Oh my God. Look, first of all, are there more important issues than both candidates and their surrogates
Thanks, Christina.
saying silly things? Like a huge issue is made out of this comedian's joke at Madison Square Garden. And then Joe Biden said that Trump supporters are garbage. And this is what we're going to debate about in the election. Aren't there more important things than this? But yes, also, look, you can hear in that clip. And this is just how lame the media is. Like they pick such obviously flawed ways to attack Trump that it's so easy to pick them apart. But like Trump is saying the people around Kamala Harris are advisors that they're garbage. He's not saying that Kamala Harris's supporters are garbage. Whereas Biden said that Trump supporters are garbage. So not that I care.
No, but it's
the
the perfect metaphor, perfect symbol for what this election coverage comes down to. Garbage.
Yeah, garbage. Just obsessing over.
It is a garbage election, though, so it kind of fits.
Sure, yeah, and obsessing over just really not important things. But anyway, let's hear this riveting exchange.
Describe Kamala Harris's supporters.
Well, I think what we're seeing here again this week, and whether the parsing of comments from the last 7 days is not what's going to determine the election. I mean, I would be thrilled to be on this show talking about the fact that North Korea is sending, troops to Ukraine, that Israel's getting ready to confront Iran over their nuclear weapon. But this is American.
Well, look at this. Doug Burgum wants to talk about the issues. He's taking,
I know,
crazy. He took the words out of our mouth, or rather, we took the words out of his mouth. Right. But look, and then what are the issues he wants to talk about? It's North Korean troops alongside Russia and Ukraine, allegedly. When in reality, I think North Korea has just been training with Russia as they've done for many years. And then he says Israel's getting ready to confront Iran over its nuclear weapon. Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. So Doug Burgum, to his credit, wants to talk about the issues. Unfortunately,
it's just delusional.
The issues he wants to talk about are non-existent.
Right. So close.
politics, and this is the season of the last week before election. There's always a lot of name calling in the last week. This has all happened before, but I think in the end of the day, the voters are going to make a decision about their own condition, and people telling them what they should be enraged about because he or she said this thing is not the same as a person's lived experience. If their lived experience is they're having trouble making their paycheck pay for their food, their gas, their clothing, their rent, or their mortgage payment, that outweighs. In the end, the economy is what's going to drive voters on Tuesday, not what.
Look at this. A Republican governor, sort of appropriating some of that
lived experience language.
Yeah, like lived experience, which is sort of associated with what's called "quote unquote" woke.
Yeah.
So Republicans, really.
He's speaking his truth, Aaron.
He's speaking his truth, calling out the media for focusing on trivial things, and then pivoting. Again, he wants to focus on non-existing things, but at least they're not trivial.
It's true. Right.
Iran's non-existent nuclear weapon. Doesn't exist, but it's not a trivial thing. Like who called who garbage?
Right. It's a big deal. It's substantive. It's just not true. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We have another. This is, you know what? I'm going to miss this guy. I really am going to miss this guy, Joe Biden, because, oh, wait, do we have another clip from before we get to the Joe Biden clip 4? No, right?
Let's play whatever clip is next.
All right. Let's go. Yeah, this is one of the things I'm going to miss about Joe Biden. Statements like this. Okay.
President Biden this weekend made Harris's unity pitch a bit harder with another crass remark about Republicans.
There's one more thing Trump and his Republican friends want to do. They want another giant tax cut for the wealthy. Now, I know some of you guys are tempted to think it's macho guys, but I'm serious. These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass.
Oh my God.
The kind of guys.
Somebody may or may not have said.
You think Kamala, he was like, Kamala, don't worry, I got this. I'm going to make a comment that's really going to reach the macho man.
Yeah, so he got sidelined because he called Trump supporters garbage, and then his next appearance is saying he wants to smack Trump and his gang
in the ass.
Smack him in the ass. Gotta say, pretty colorful. Joe Biden. I mean, no one else is talking like that on the campaign trail, or at least on the Democratic side. I mean, Trump says all sorts of wild things, but I guess Biden is saying he wants to out-Trump Trump.
Right. That was a good one. I liked it.
But I don't understand. I mean, I've never felt compelled to, smack anyone in the behind. Right. Especially not someone I'm like an adversary with.
Well, Aaron, you may have noticed that you're not president. Maybe that's why.
I'm just trying to think. Like, if I had any adversaries that I felt compelled, no one comes to mind. But
you're more into the rock throwing, I believe, based on your history.
That's a useful edit deep cut. Yeah. You have to go back to the archives to learn about that one. Okay, let's turn to Marco Rubio.
Hands.
Oh,
he is chair of the he's vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and it wouldn't be a U.S. election without allegations of foreign interference.
Right.
So let's turn to Marco Rubio.
This massive and pervasive hacking by China of U.S. telecom companies is significant. Your colleague, Mark Warner, said it's the most significant breach he has ever seen in his entire time on the committee. Do you know if China has been able to access the audio of Americans' phone calls?
Well, I'm not going to comment on what they access, but I agree with Mark Warner's statement. It is an egregious, outrageous, and dangerous breach of our telecommunication systems across multiple companies. I'll leave it at that. I think as time goes on, we're going to learn more about it. Some of it will be made public. I think there's more that's still being gathered. It's a very serious situation that we face, and I think one that is quite threatening, maybe not directly to the election per se, but certainly to the national security of our country moving forward. It's a vulnerability that no one imagined or anticipated, but here it is.
So this is basically an allegation that China has launched a massive hacking operation, and I don't really know what's going on there. To be honest with you, I haven't looked into it, but it just, can we get through one election without accusing one foreign power of hacking? Is that ever going to happen? I don't think so. In the aftermath of Russiagate, and of course, because Republicans, one of their biggest geopolitical foes is China, they're going to obviously focus on China. And if Trump loses, perhaps he will be blaming China or Iran for his loss this time.
Right. Or the Jews.
Following Democrats and blaming Russia.
Right. He did preview that if he loses, it may be because of Jewish people.
That is true. Okay. We have more foreign influence, and it's coming from Iran.
intelligence has been briefing and disclosing. That's
I know
part of
you
what they're
can
doing to try
see
to
that,
counteract
Adrienne,
this.
later. No, I can't see your comment.
We also saw early on warnings about Iran and what they are doing. The assessment, Iran favors Harris, Russia favors Trump. What form of influence are we seeing?
Well, Iran has two main goals in this election cycle. First, to denigrate President Trump. They have expressed a preference for Vice President Harris based upon Trump's record in office and their perception of what Mr. Trump would do if elected. That's objective one. Objective two is to sow discord, and they view undermining perceptions about the integrity of our elections as an effective tool. So they are using influence operations to denigrate Mr. Trump and to sow discord using AI-generated content, really focused in particular on, for example, allegations of voter fraud. We should expect Iran to continue increasingly sophisticated influence operations related to perceptions of a lack of election integrity.
So, like, this whole thing is so weird. So, media is just a constant echo chamber of accusations against the other party. Trump saying the other side commits fraud. They're getting undocumented immigrants to vote for them. Democrats are saying Trump is basically Hitler. He's a Russian puppet. So everybody, by definition, is sowing discord, right? It sounds like discord to me to like amplify things that are divisive 24/7 on cable news. But yet it's only Iran and Russia and China that get accused of sowing discord. Like when corporate media is doing it 24/7, that's just like they're just being like news people. When some random trolls on social media are doing it, you can maybe trace that back to Iran or Russia. That is foreign influence. It's sowing discord. It's a massive crisis. Oh my God, what do we do? We're helpless. This might decide the election. Not stopping for a second to see, hey, maybe what are we doing to sow discord about our own country?
Well, that's our lane, Aaron. That's our lane.
It is our lane.
It's not the other people's lane. Yeah.
Yeah. And heaven forbid we maybe look at how we're sowing discord in other countries, like not just by spending a lot more money on propaganda, which we do, but also imposing sanctions that destroy economies and fueling wars, all that stuff. Never mind all that.
Right.
That's a form of influence, foreign influence. We don't acknowledge either.
That will last well after polls close, Margaret. This is the most attenuated election security-related threat environment we have likely seen in history.
How do these people expect us to take them seriously? The most attenuated.
Yeah, I don't even know like what that means. What does that mean? This is the most attenuated election.
Just changing votes. It's
Oops,
about
sorry.
not.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to hear a follow-up. Like, hey, what do you mean by that? What does that mean?
Yeah, when
the
you say
most
attenuated. Yeah.
Election security environment history.
Right.
What do you mean?
Thin or reduced in thickness. Having been reduced in force, effect, or value. Yeah, I really would love a follow-up. Reminds me of, I once went on a date years ago with a guy who was a psychoanalyst. I didn't know when I went on the date with him that he was a psychoanalyst. It was a blind date. And I asked him what he did, like as a psychoanalyst. And he goes, well, in many ways, my job is to provoke people. And I said, what do you mean by provoke? And he goes, what do I mean by provoke? What do I mean by provoke? That's a good question. Obviously, no one had ever asked him what he meant by that because he was betting on people wanting to sound smart and not calling him out on a ridiculous answer. So really, they need me. I need Margaret's job. I'd be better at it based on my past experience, based on my lived experience. Yeah.
You provoked him by asking him to explain what he meant.
I did, yeah. And now we're engaged. Just kidding. That was the first and last date, yeah.
Okay, well, listen, continuing on this thing, it would not be a U.S. election if the Russians were not accused of being involved.
Oh, yeah.
And someone who's really made a nice hustle out of fear-mongering about the Russians is Chris Krebs. He served as an election security official under Trump. And he was basically, I covered this back during the Russiagate era. He was basically bullied into claiming with zero evidence that the Russians were hacking into voting machines, even though they weren't. There's no evidence of it. And now he's, gone into the private sector, and this is his beat. So here he is, fear-mongering about the Russians.
At least 4 fake videos the FBI and U.S. intelligence have warned are meant to manipulate. Yesterday, the FBI said there were 2 out there that are fake. Before that, we had disclosures that Russia was behind a Bucks County, Pennsylvania fake video and one targeting voters in Georgia, falsely claiming that Haitian migrants were voting. How do these tactics that Russia is using now compare to what you saw in 2020 and back in 2016?
Well, they've evolved their techniques from generating and launching content from, for instance, St. Petersburg. That's what we saw in 2016. You had the Internet Research Agency operating out of an office building, almost like a normal business. Over time, though, given the improvements in the intelligence community, Cyber Command, and
Okay, and again, for those who don't remember or don't know, what was the Internet Research Agency? It was a Russian troll farm that put out dumb memes on social media that nobody saw and that were barely about the election. There was like a couple of posts about Trump and Hillary. There was the infamous, Jesus will help you beat masturbation meme. Yosemite Sam complaining that guns are being taken away. And they became the boogeyman in the election. Like in the eyes of like Russia gators, these Russian troll farm employees in St. Petersburg, or wherever they were brainwashing millions of Americans into not voting for Hillary Clinton and sowing discord. So basically causing black people to be upset about racism. That was the thing.
Unbelievable, yeah.
And what is amazing is the Internet Research Agency, when Robert Mueller, if you remember him, indicted.
How could we forget him?
Indicted them. Yeah. Indicted them. The Internet Research Agency actually showed up in court in the U.S. and fought the case because Mueller brought this like a really convoluted election interference case that made no sense and was based on these really creative interpretations of the law. So the Internet Research Agency hired a U.S. lawyer and they fought the case. And what did Robert Mueller do? He dropped the case. He dropped it. So Robert Mueller indicting the supposed, interference operation from Russia, holding them to account. What did he do when they actually pushed back and actually started demanding evidence? That he dropped the case, and he claimed that bringing the case would endanger national security. And what actually happened was he knew that disclosing his actual arguments and his evidence would show that the whole thing was a fraud, and that he was indicting a Russian troll farm based on for non-existent interference and based on the fact that it put out dumb memes that nobody saw. But that's the history of the Internet Research Agency, which has been completely swept under the rug, and all this Russiagate mania, which still unbelievably has not gone away.
Right. Really, absolutely unbelievable when you think about it.
Our own awareness of the activities and what they're doing, they've started to push the boundaries out. And so they're actually generating content and then they're laundering it effectively through other platforms like Telegram. And even now what we're seeing is a significant amount of laundering through X. And then U.S. citizens pick up this information and pick up these videos, and then they promote it on their own accounts and on their own social media platforms like Facebook. So they're moving it out. They're avoiding the techniques that U.S. Law enforcement intelligence has deployed and developed. And so they're not as good, though. So a lot of these videos that we're seeing, they're actually quite amateurish. That's not to say they can't have better content coming forward, but really they're just kind of flooding the zone and trying to distract.
Okay, so again, in this world, some dumb social media posts that are, in his own telling, amateurish.
Right.
Let's say they were created by Russians. Okay, let's just assume that. I haven't looked in every single case he's talking about here. There's so much content on social media, and people really want us to think that some dumb memes or dumb posts or dumb AI that are amateurish and that no one can see is flooding the zone. So the implications, we're all overcome, we're all disoriented by this bombardment of like Russian social media activity. And this will somehow impact a single vote. Like, is a single person going to have their vote influenced by some dumb Russian social media content that no one sees? No. But they still play this up as like the biggest threat we're facing.
Right. Imagine all the stuff that they could be talking about if they didn't talk about that.
Yeah, well, that's Russiagate for you. Okay, more from Chris Krebs, because what this really is about is lamenting that the Russian boogeyman is not being used to censor content that people like him don't like.
Ask you about those mechanisms, this fire hose and how it spreads. I mean, X now is owned by Elon Musk. That wasn't the case 4 years ago. We've seen him already before Election Day share a number of inaccurate reports about fraud and other just misleading elements of disinformation. How concerned are you, or should we be, about his ownership of X in this moment and the role that could play in spreading conspiracies as people are trying to consume accurate information. And we're trying to make sure the public has accurate information about what's happening.
So first things first, if you're looking for accurate information on the 24 election, always go to your state and local election official. Vote.gov is a great resource to figure out who you need to be looking to. But in the case of this spread of disinformation, what we're seeing is the Russians are developing content and then laundering it. They're laundering it through Telegram, they're laundering it through X, that's then getting picked up by American citizens, and they are then amplifying it. They are then repeating it.
So he's got his talking points down.
AC, I don't agree with you. Like, I agree with Aaron's take, pretty much. I mean, even if it, like, is a sophisticated attack, like, or something, like, from Russia, like, I don't think it fucking matters. Yeah, we need some chatters for you to bully.
So he's describing the process where people spread propaganda, which of course is never done on MSNBC, which constantly pushes war propaganda, constantly pushes Russiagate propaganda. But it's people on social media being duped by Russians. They're the ones who are the only ones amplifying disinformation.
Which is their First Amendment right, absolutely. But we are seeing a shift in behaviors because of a pullback in content moderation on X. And the Russians, they're exploiting this seam.
Okay, so there it is. That's what this is all about. There's been a pullback in content moderation on Twitter. What does he mean by that? There's less censorship. So, for example, 4 years ago, Twitter censored
the United States would never interfere in a foreign election.
Actual story about Hunter Biden's laptop, which was falsely blamed on who else? The Russians. And he's complaining that that is no longer happening. So he's like, yes, there's the right to the First Amendment to free speech, but it's also a big problem that we're not censoring anymore. That's essentially his argument. Okay.
Joey. What's up, Lainey? What's up, Sinister Hand? Welcome in.
We can move on to Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, Trump surrogate, speaking to
this is a good
Dana
one. Yeah.
Your optimism, that's your job on the eve of the election. But what I'm asking about is what if he doesn't win? And the fact of the matter is that Trump is already spreading false claims about cheating in Pennsylvania. He has repeatedly predicted a massive victory, even though polls show that the race is very close. He's setting the stage for his supporters not to believe the results if he loses. Do you want him to?
Welcome in, Miss Kissiana. Sorry. This whole paranoia about Russian agents influencing and infiltrating everything honestly reminds me of 1930s Germany, except this time it's a different nationality group that is so strong that they control everything, but so weak that we can defeat it. Yeah, for sure. I mean, maybe not 1930s Germany, but like Red Scare type.
Yeah, exactly, Sinister Hand. More like 1950s McCarthyism. Thank you. Igloo BC, good morning. I mean, we supply weapons to to the majority of the world. Like,
to stop doing that.
I would never tell any candidate on the ballot to talk about what happens if they lose. Obviously, you're going to lean into the victory, especially.
I appreciate that, Senator. Forgive me, but spreading false rumors.
You're running ahead of your candidate.
Aaron, you're going to love
but
this.
Saying false
Dana,
things
you and
about
disagree on this one.
fraud
Totally disagree on this
is not. You think it's okay to spread false rumors about fraud and undermine the integrity of the election, regardless of what happens?
Dana, the liberal media has done a better job of spreading misinformation than
Senator.
any candidate I've seen so far. That's true. Listen, here's the fact. We're not seeing the coverage of 2 assassination attempts on CNN
We
against
did
Donald Trump.
wall-to-wall
We're not seeing the
coverage.
comments about Kamala Harris talking about fascists, calling Donald Trump a fascist.
John Kelly
We
called
should
him a
focus on
fascist.
giving
His
the
former
American
chief of
people
staff.
the opportunity, giving, and she repeated it, giving people the
Well,
opportunity
wouldn't you?
to make
If
their own
Kamala
decisions.
Harris's former
That's
chief
what
of
we
staff
Americans-
called her a fascist, I would guess that you would repeat it too. And
Listen.
Donald Trump has called him one as well.
The bottom line is this, Dana. Bottom line is this. We should focus on the issues that the
Hello
Americans are talking about.
there.
They're talking about the greatest invasion across our southern border. Black communities across this country, particularly in inner cities, are talking about the devastation of the presence of Venezuela gangs, leading to more crime.
This is like a nightmare. Okay, so the media is so bad, and then no one trusts the media anymore, and so Republicans are taking advantage of that by, so it's like, yeah, like, listen, we all know the media is bad, so let's talk about the important issues like Venezuelan gangs invading us.
Right.
So they point out the media's fakery by
Right.
then exploit that to promote their own fakery.
Right. Like Iranian nuclear weapons.
Yeah, it's the worst of all
yeah.
worlds. And look how defensive Dana Bash is. Like, we don't spread misinformation.
Right.
How dare you?
Yeah.
How
No,
dare you?
we just lie about Russiagate. We lie about Hamas. We lie about Rashida Tlaib. We just make up lies out of whole cloth about her blaming a Jewish attorney general for doing something because she's Jewish. Do you guys remember that? I mean, it was just unbelievable. These people have no credibility and no shame.
It's really, if we had an actual left in this country, like an organized left and a cohesive left that wasn't always fighting with each other, they could point out that both sides here are wrong and that there's an alternative to all this bickering, and there are actually policies we can talk about, not like mythical gangs invading the country,
right?
But
occupying the country,
the lack of healthcare, the
Right.
fight for better wages, all these things. But that just doesn't really exist, and to the extent it exists, it's not really allowed on corporate TV. The best we can get is like people like Bernie Sanders, who almost get it, but still ultimately fall into some of the trappings of partisan politics too. So it's yeah, this is very bleak. This is very, very bleak.
Yeah,
Okay,
very
do you want
bleak
more? Do
indeed.
you want more of this clip, or should we move on?
I think we can move on.
Okay.
I think we nailed it.
All right. Well, we're running out of time, so
Yeah, let's see. We have four. We're only at 40.
Hey, look, it's me. It's Adrienneception. Streamception. Whoa. Yeah, that was pretty trippy. Yeah. Y'all are getting so much Adrienne right now for free, basically. Because I have been streaming for almost 8.5 hours, you guys, and it would really mean a lot to me if someone could support the stream. Speaking of getting Adrienne for some value.
Threw a kilo of pure uncut white supremacy on the table.
Thank you for the follow.
Give me your fucking money!
Cheer 300. Comrade Sky cheered 300 bits.
If you like dog shit content, please subscribe. Thank you, Comradsky. Thanks for 300 biddies. That's very generous of you. Thank you so much. Yeah, why is Top Chat even a thing?
I don't like a bunch of chemicals in the water.
Uni 100. Christina Amazon cheered 100 bits.
Oh my god. Frogs, friggin' frogs. It's not funny. I'm gonna say it real slow for you. Gay frogs. Won't you fight for your life? Gay frogs, friggin' frogs. I don't like a frog. Gay friggin' frogs.
Yes, and she posted it on YouTube.
Friggin' frog crap. Won't you fight the frogs? It's not funny. I'm gonna say it real slow for you. Frogs. Place point.
This is turning into a revolution.
Gay frogs. T0 Kai 0 hands subscribe to your channel
Baby
for 9 months.
time. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for 9 months. Gay frogs. Let's go.
This song's called Double Take. Where I go, they do it.
Oh, it's not that fast. Like, she raps fast, but not that fast.
Got catcalled at 10 minutes that I've been awake walking my dog. They do it! Hold up, wait. Bitch, hold up, wait. Everywhere I go, they do it. No. So this is what happened. I'm like walking down the street with my dog, and bro comes back to holler at shorty, and I'ma just have to say, look, the hottest bitch up in my city, ain't no debate about it. Go tell that Karen, stop staring, take a picture, matter of fact. This ain't shit, go hit my Insta, matter of fact. I'm that bitch, so quit your bitching. Here's a fact sitting. Look, I am a light in the light.
Thank you so much for coming over and resubscribing.
But I am not ducking and covering. I am not tucking in public. I want you to know what my nuts is. I see your empty wallet looks a lot where I keep my fucks in. Double take, bitch, hold away. Bitch, hold away. Everywhere I go, they do it. Wait. No, wait, bitch, hold up. Wait, bitch, everywhere I go, they do it. Double take. Wait. Bitch, everywhere I go, they do it. I put some titties on my. I put some titties on my. I put some titties. I put titties. I put some titties on my chest, but y'all still be double checking genders. What's between your pants? What got me a lethal? Now if you with it, grab a pistol, pop a biggie in his little dick. I'm about to pop up on that opposition. Where me at? Wait. Man, please just be so jealous. Tell them evangelicals need to eat some edibles, vegan, keto, it could be whatever though. Tell them if they really want me, they can come and get me. I don't go quietly and it won't go quickly. I got a big knife and I might chop a dick. She's free like a mace and walk the line like Dixie. Wait, catch me rolling down magazine. A little skirt, big dick with the purse full of weed. And there's some weirdos with me, some queer hoes with me. And these hecklers reflecting in their thoughts about themselves. They're just some mirror hoes. Okay, I'm feeling like Anna Villa Eric. Kill a little bit out Paris as soon as I'm finished with killing Americans. I promise my mama that I'ma get closer to God. As soon as they come, I learn to stop. As soon as the devil stop helping me out. As soon as these Baptists stop calling me faggot. As soon as these assholes stop pushing the shit they don't practice. Even in here they can see you an ass backwards advocate. Better back up before I smack this shit out of patio. You lucky I'm puffing, I'm weed, and I'm done with the Adderall. You lucky I don't even need to prove anything. So I be doing my thing, and they be doing a double take. Double take. I just be walking the pockets and motherfuckers run away. Bitch, I am not gonna give you the runaround. How about the runaway? Just one note. If you got something that you wanna say, say that they say an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. These bigots don't see our vision, so they need to be beaten to submission. My existence is not up for debate. So if you trans, grab a hammer, shoot them right in the face. It's damage, bitch.
This is turning into a revolution.
Thank you,
Christina Amazon gifted 1 subscription.
So they ain't to see me at all. They worry about what's in my drawers when y'all.
All right, we're so close to level 2. Are we gonna make it? Are we gonna make it?
This is turning into a revolution.
One Great Earth subscribed to your channel for 4 months. Cheer 100. The _anti_corporatist cheered 100 bits.
One Great Earth subscribed to tier 3. Get wrecked level 2. Thank you.
Eat shit, peasants!
T0Chi0 hands gifted 5 subscriptions.
Thank you, Hands, for the 5 bomb. Y'all, we get a merch giveaway. Hey, Fabuli. YouTubers, you have to come over to Twitch if you want to be part of the merch giveaway, though. I can't do both chats at the same time. Sorry. You can come over to Twitch, and anyone can be entered in chat for a giveaway.
Party 100. Christina Amazon cheered 100 bits.
Is that better? It was kind of loud. Clinton defense who? Oh.
This is turning into a revolution.
Christina Amazon gifted 1 subscription.
Oh my gosh, Christina, thank you so much for gifting one to our new friend. Yeah, I can't find it. I don't know. New product alert. How cute. Palestine pin set. All right, chat. We still have 2 minutes on the hype train, though. Still have 2 minutes. What are we going to do with it? What can I play that's not... Here we go. This should be fine.
I got a bunker for the summertime. I brought a bonky boy, I'm ready if we're gonna fight. So if the piggies come on bonking, I'm another time. The traitors to the working class, so it's completely justified. And you wonder why we hate the cops, cause we're forced to watch this shit a lot. Solidarity could make it stop, so hit your local cop with the bonky bomb. All drugs to the front with a juxtaposition. Just guns versus jugs, that's just a juxtaposition. Just so you know, I brought some veggies and a can of beans. Now we got the water and stool for our family.
We're at 69 nice % of the way to level 5.
Give a fuck about the police, battle about the drug and come with it.
We have 1 minute left.
Give me some
Nice.
Ooh, if you wake up like me, then shake that ass. Go ahead and shake that ass. Ooh, if you wake up like me, then yell at cat. Ooh, if you wake up just like me, then hit that dance down. Hit that bump dance, baby. Bum, bum, that's how you should treat the cup. Make them take more than 5 L's, that's how you beat the cup. Bum, bum, do you want this drug or not? Come and go home
10
with
seconds,
the
chat.
jug.
Any edgers?
No,
chat.
going too off with big old plastic jugs, just like a poop job. They wanna know what I
All right.
think when I was first.
Thank you so much, chat. Thank you for the level 4 hype train. Free Palestine to the grave, bitch.
It's not a clip, only bitch, it's a life lesson. If you're resourceful and you think
I want that. I want that emote. I don't have it yet. I think you have to have like a level 10 hype train. Something. I don't think I've ever had one. But the first hype train I ever had was like level 9, thanks to an anonymous gifter for gifting like 50 subs. Yeah, it was like my like 3rd or 4th day as affiliate, and very generous anonymous gifter looked it up. Bonk bonk. All right. What do we think? Do we like the new buttons? New button sets? Get them big or small? Cute buttons? Oh, I should turn the confetti off and like. Yeah, I only have the sad bleed purple. My thoughts on the PFLP? I mean, as far as I don't know much about them and what they've been up to recently, but as far as I know, they're a Marxist organization that supports Palestinian liberation, and that's everything I stand for. But yeah, I'm not super well educated in everything, you know. Thank you guys. Okay. We also have new this is on sale. Embroidered Palestine heart organic cotton beanie. So right now in the merch store, I'm gonna do a plug. All wintry gear is 15% off. So that includes long sleeve shirts, hoodies, beanies, jackets, socks, the one pair of socks. All the pants, all the leggings, and all the coffee mugs are 15% off. And if you are a Twitch subscriber, you get 10% off of everything. Yes, I could read the PFLP's plan for liberation. Thank you, Comradsky. Yeah, get your merch, y'all. I'm running specials. I don't know. I hope I'm, not gonna cost myself too much money. Sticker. See. I usually give away a Gay Frog hype sticker. I need to do laundry, AC. Why is there no crotchless chaps merch? I mean, you can always cut the crotch out of the leggings. There's joggers. You could just any pants are crotchless pants if you're brave enough. Oh, and this is so cool. You can like if you guys like are ever feeling super generous, and somebody did this on the like first day that the merch was live, which was really nice. You can gift to the Twitch chat and it'll do its own random drawing. So, pretty neat. Okay, I need to set up the drawing. Don't yell at me. Computer. I'm working here. I'm working here. Oh my gosh. Giveaways. New giveaway. Yes, mods are eligible. Okay. Go ahead. Get yourselves in there by chatting in the chat. Starting right meow. If you chat in the Twitch chat, you will be eligible for a merch giveaway. Joey's Doodles, you're in there. Samiwa, you're in there. Christina, you're in there. Let's go. Pendulous Dragon, give it away, give it away, give it away now. Miss Kissiana, sorry, I'll get it right. You're in there. Let's go. Joker, you're in there. Let's freaking go. Let's do a... Hands. Nope. You just gotta chat in the chat.
Chatting is so much work. You're right. I can exclude you, but I can mark you ineligible. But I don't think it's unfair if you win twice. You're a hardworking mod. Yeah, lurkers, rise up, lurkers. Hello. Hello. Yeah, I think it's totally okay if you win more than once. But that's sweet of you. Yeah.
Never forgotten, forever missed. I remember you on my canvas. Paint your crown, loud and proud, misunderstood. Which is where flipped attitudes didn't exclude more gratitude. Indigenous life misconstrued the truth. I used to pray to a white God, now I head nod church in the booth. Cause God isn't no limit, she's in his Adidas. Dancing nowhere and in between us, anonymous to androgynous. You and I see, why do we divide and conquer? Why do we divide and conquer?
All right, y'all. I think we got all our chatters in. I think this is everyone who wants in.
Why does it seem like I can never finish? Like I'm only up for glimpses, expression on the surface. If I'm worth it, don't mean I'm perfect. I'm pushing on a limit. I ain't trying to stay
Chatter. Oh, we got 1 minute left on the song. I'll wait till the song's over. And then we'll roll it.
Drop my heart in every track, watch it overflow. Blood, sweat, tears on my mic at the show. Could drown any motherfucker in my ill flow. They'll just say I'm really
Yes, Knight Rider, you're in.
No place in the books written. Out of history's overlooked by crooks, so I keep spitting. For all the aliens, I rise above the clones. It's a time to feel alone with the stage in my home.
All right, drum roll, please. Christina! Congratulations! Let's fucking go! Wow, 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 wow. All right, what did I do with the linky link? I got too many tabs going. Okay. Copy link. There you go. And oh, you have won a Palestine pin button set. I think that's true. You say what you say is important. So Yeah, let's go. All right. Yeah, and thank you everyone for the level 4 hype train. Thank you for all participating in the giveaway. Congratulations to Christina Amazon. My negativity had ruined my chances. Maybe. Yay. All right. Let's get into democracy. Right now.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, War, Peace, and the Presidency. I'm Amy Goodman. Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are both headed to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania today on the final day of campaigning before Tuesday's election. Harris is scheduled to also hold 3 other events in Pennsylvania, in Scranton, in Allentown, and in Philadelphia. Trump's also heading to Raleigh, North Carolina, Reading, Pennsylvania, and will end in Grand Rapids, Michigan tomorrow. More than 78 million voters have already cast their ballots. On Sunday, Trump held a rally in Lititz, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where he told supporters he shouldn't have left the White House after losing to Joe Biden 4 years ago.
We had the safest border in the history of our country the day that I left. I shouldn't have left. I mean, honestly, because we did so well.
During the same rally, Trump also said he wouldn't mind if someone shot through a crowd of journalists covering his rally.
And to get me, somebody would have to shoot through the fake news. And I don't mind that so much, because I don't mind that.
For months, pollsters have predicted the presidential race will come down to 7 battleground states: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia. But over the weekend, the most prominent pollster in Iowa, Ann Seltzer, released the Des Moines Register poll, which showed Harris has taken a shocking 3-point lead in Iowa, which Trump easily won in 2016 and 2020. The poll showed women voters have shifted heavily toward Harris in Iowa, where a 6-week abortion ban took effect in July. In related news, thousands took part in a women's march to the White House on Saturday.
We got to stand up for democracy. We have to stand up for women's
like
rights to
dog
have
shit
control
content,
over her
please
body,
subscribe.
control over her life. Women's rights are human rights. And we
What's
were
up,
back in the
amazing
hallways.
baby?
I'm a 77-year-old woman. I remember when women were crying and carrying on with coat hangers and other kinds of means to save their lives.
Top United Nations officials are warning again the entire Palestinian population in North Gaza is, quote, at imminent risk of dying from disease, famine, and violence. In a warning issued on Friday, the heads of 15 humanitarian groups wrote, quote, the situation.
Is that Kathy Griffin? No. Amy Goodman?
In related news, thousands took part in a women's march to the White House.
Oh, Miss Kissiana, just so you know, we do have the lol emote blocked. So when you put it at the ends of your chats, your messages won't get through. Because it's transphobic. But I will allow. Oh wait, yeah, I'll let that one go. There's a yeah, thank you, Joker. An article and a petition to get it changed. just shared it on Twitter too. Sent Sammy the link for the sweater. Oh my gosh, that would be so cool.
On Saturday.
We got to stand up for democracy. We have to stand up for women's right to have control over her body, control over her life. Women's rights are human rights. And we were back in the hallways. I'm a 77-year-old woman. I remember when women were crying and carrying on with coat hangers and other kinds of means to save their lives.
Top United Nations officials are warning again the entire Palestinian population and
just to make sure everyone's on the same page. Trans rights are human rights. Trans women are women. Trans men are men. Non-binary folks are valid, including myself. And we support a radically free Palestine.
Trans rights.
Yeah.
North Gaza is, quote, at imminent risk of dying from disease, famine, and violence. In a warning issued on Friday, the heads of 15 humanitarian groups wrote, quote, the situation unfolding in North Gaza is apocalyptic. The area has been under siege for almost a month, denied basic aid and life-saving supplies, while bombardment and other attacks continue, unquote. According to UNICEF, Israeli attacks killed more than 50 children over a 48-hour period this weekend in the Jabalia refugee camp. Earlier today, Israeli forces shelled the Kamal Adwan hospital. The hospital's director said multiple children were injured when the Israeli shells struck the pediatric ward and nursery. Israel's also accused of attacking a polio vaccination center in Gaza City, injuring at least 4 children. On Friday, an Israeli airstrike killed Palestinian photojournalist Bilal Mohammed Rajab, bringing the death toll of journalists killed in Gaza to as high as 183 over the last 13 months. Aid groups fear the humanitarian situation will soon worsen in Gaza, as Israel's officially notified the United Nations that it has cut off ties to UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestine Refugees. The head of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, condemned Israel's move.
This ban will not make Israel safer. It will only deepen the suffering of the people of Gaza and increase the risk of disease outbreaks.
On Friday, the Pentagon announced new deployments to the Middle East, including B-52 long-range bombers and ballistic missile defense destroyers. In a statement, the Pentagon said the move was done in part for the, quote, defense of Israel, unquote. Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, a group of progressive lawmakers led by Rashida Tlaib and Cori Bush have sent President Biden a letter warning the growing U.S. involvement in regional wars in the Middle East has not been authorized by Congress. The lawmakers wrote, quote, these destructive wars must end, as must any unauthorized U.S. involvement in them, they wrote. Here in New York City, protesters took to the streets Saturday to demand no votes for genocide. Protesters decried both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump for supporting Israel's war on Gaza and refusing to back an arms embargo on Israel. Participants at the protest included Claudia de la Cruz, who's running for president on the Party for Socialism and Liberation ticket.
We are here to remind the capitalist state that there is an entire movement of hundreds of thousands of people all across this country that has been demanding a ceasefire, that has been demanding an arms embargo, that has been demanding an end to the expansion of genocide and war in the Middle East, and that we have not been heard, we have not been considered, and in that same way we will engage in our political right not to engage with a two-party system that continuously insists on paying for and bombing babies across the Middle East.
Meanwhile, in London, pro-Palestinian protesters held a symbolic die-in in front of the British Prime Minister's office Saturday. In Spain, King Felipe, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez and other officials were met with furious crowds as they toured the flood-stricken Valencia region, where at least 214 people died last week. Locals threw mud at the king and his entourage and shouted out, "Killer, shame, and you abandon us," amidst mounting public outrage over the delayed warnings before the disaster and the slow delivery of aid in the flood's wake. In Colombia, the UN Biodiversity Summit, known as COP16, ended without a much sought-after agreement on funding by wealthy countries. Greenpeace International said, quote, "The world has lost 5 to 10% of all insect species in the last 150 years. There will be no way out of this terrifying biodiversity crisis if global North countries continue to put money above life on our planet," they said. Negotiators from smaller countries said they had to abandon talks after they stretched past the official end of the summit because they could not afford to change their flight plans. But some good news emerged from the summit as well, including a measure establishing a permanent indigenous consulting body at the UN to weigh in on conservation issues. This is Camila Paz Romero, spokesperson for indigenous peoples at the summit.
Good night, Tokyo Hands. Thanks again for all the support. Appreciate you.
Esta es una ocasión sin precedentes.
This is an unprecedented event in the history of multilateral agreements on the environment. The indigenous groups and the local communities of the world are connected through our knowledge systems on how to take care of life and biodiversity. Let's remember the long way we have advanced with this agreement. This new subsidiary organ is an example for the rest of the world. In it, the different parties recognize the constant need for our complete and effective participation.
Environmentalists also welcome progress on the Global Oceans Treaty, which groups hope will be ratified by June 2025, as well as a new measure for drug companies to share profits from products based on genetic data derived from nature. Moldova's EU-aligned president, Maia Sandu, has won a second term following a runoff vote which pitted the incumbent against a pro-Moscow opponent. Sandu's national security advisor accused Russia of massive interference. This is President Sandu at her victory speech.
Moldova has been under an unprecedented attack in the history of all Europe. Dirty money, illegal vote buying, the interference in electoral processes by hostile forces from outside the country and by criminal groups, lies, sowing hatred and fear within our society. Our people have united, and freedom and the citizens have won. Peace and hope for a better life have prevailed.
Meanwhile, in the Republic of Georgia, prosecutors are investigating allegations of election fraud against President Salome Zurabishvili, refused last week to recognize the parliamentary election victory of the ruling Georgian Dream Party. She accuses Georgian Dream of using Russian-style tactics and propaganda to rig the elections. The EU has suspended Georgia's EU membership process over its foreign influence law passed in June, which critics say is modeled after Russian laws. The Sudanese Doctors Union says fighters for the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces raped at least 47 people, including 3 minors in the eastern Al Jazeera state, as part of a retaliation campaign against the Sudanese army. An 11-year-old girl died from her bleeding. This comes amidst a spate of recent reports on widespread sexual assault as the devastating civil war in Sudan rages on. A UN report has accused militia fighters of using rape as part of a genocidal campaign in Darfur to eliminate non-Arab
If I heard that correctly, an 11-year-old was raped to death.
Groups like the Masalit. One survivor said her attacker told her, quote, "We will make you give birth to Arab children." Aid groups are reporting an increase in suicides among rape survivors and women who fear being raped. And news from Puerto Rico. An estimated 50,000 people attended a rally Sunday organized by the center-left coalition known as Alianza, or Alliance, ahead of Tuesday's election. The third-party coalition has gained momentum, with Puerto Rican voters disaffected with the two main parties over corruption scandals, austerity policies, and the disastrous privatization of the electrical grid. Alianza's gubernatorial candidate, Juan Dalmau, addressed the crowd.
Nosotros como pueblo en los últimos 55 años.
As a people, during the last 55 years, we've suffered the consequences of the bipartisan red and blue, of a leadership which betrayed the faith that many Puerto Ricans had on them. Our moment to reclaim this country has arrived, to reclaim the government as ours.
This is Puerto Rican music superstar Bad Bunny, who also performed at the event.
En 2 días, truene.
In 2 days, whether there's thunder, rain, or lightning, nothing will stop us from making history. I will never forget how the government abandoned us during the hurricane. This November 5th, this Tuesday, November 5th, we are going to be the storm, and there's nobody who can save them.
Bad Bunny and other Puerto Rican celebrities like Fat Joe, who will be appearing with Kamala Harris in Pennsylvania today, recently threw their support behind Harris after a conservative so-called comic at Trump's Madison Square Garden rally called Puerto Rico an island of garbage. In Kentucky, a jury found former police officer Brett Hankison guilty of using excessive force and violating the civil rights of Breonna Taylor during the raid that killed Taylor inside her own home in 2020. Taylor was a black 26-year-old emergency technician. It's the first conviction of any of the Louisville police officers involved in the botched raid. A judge will sentence Hankison on March 12th, just 1 day ahead of the 5-year anniversary of Breonna Taylor's death. He faces a maximum sentence of life in prison. And the musical icon Quincy Jones has died at the age of 91. During a 7-decade career, the trailblazing producer, arranger, and performer won 28 Grammys and helped transform the sound of popular music, from producing Michael Jackson's Thriller to overseeing the all-star recording of We Are the World. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, War, Peace, and the Presidency. I'm Amy Goodman.
War isn't murder, good men don't die, children don't starve, and all the women survive. War isn't murder, well, that's what they say, and you're fighting the devil. Murder's okay. War isn't murder, they're called casualties. There ain't a veteran with a good night's sleep. Let's talk about dead people. I mean a dead people. The dead don't feel honor, they don't feel that brave, they don't feel avenged. They're lucky if they got graves. Call your dead mother, ask her when she died. It's a deathly silence on the other line. The dead don't talk, but their children don't forget. So in 20 short years you could live to regret that. War isn't murder, there's money at stake. Yeah, even Kushner agrees there's good at real estate. War isn't murder, ask Netanyahu. He's got a psalm for that, he's got a bomb for you. War isn't murder, it's an old desert faith. It's a nation-state sanctioned righteous hate. Let's talk about dead people. I mean a dead people. War isn't murder, it's the vengeance of God. If you can't see the bodies, they don't blow when they rot. And the flies don't swarm, and the children don't cry. If war isn't murder, good men don't die. So in a short 20 years where you vacation the strip, try not and think about the dead, and have a nice trip.
give thanks. I saw it all in a movie. Give it up for Tom Hanks. War isn't murder. They don't ship out the poor, and the bullets they fire ain't part of the cure. War isn't murder. Land is a right, but the bank's called dibs. It's something you can't fight. Let's talk about dead people. I mean dead people. The dead don't feel honor. They don't feel that brave. They don't feel avenged. They're lucky if they got graves. Call your dead mother. Ask her when she died. It's a deathly silence on the other line. The dead don't talk, but the children don't forget. So in 20 short years, you could live to regret that.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. It was another deadly weekend in Gaza, where UNICEF reports more than 50 children were killed in Israeli strikes on the Jabalia refugee camp in the span of 48 hours. 2 residential buildings sheltering hundreds of displaced Palestinians were reportedly leveled in the attack. UNICEF is also demanding Israel launch an immediate investigation after a vehicle driven by one of its staff members came under fire by an Israeli quadcopter flying above Jabalia this weekend. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization said at least 4 children were injured after Israeli forces dropped a stun grenade on a polio immunization center in Gaza City's Sheikh Radwan district. Israel's attack came despite agreeing to a humanitarian pause in order to carry out the final phase of the polio immunization campaign after it was postponed in October due to Israel's indiscriminate bombardment, siege, and repeated targeting of humanitarian aid workers. This is a Palestinian mother of 3 speaking from Gaza City.
I stayed here in northern Gaza along with all my children and came here to give my children the polio vaccine. They were supposed to get it a month ago, but due to the Israeli offensive and the siege, it was delayed a month. We hope it will protect the children against polio. I call on the world to stop the genocide of northern Gaza because we are literally dying. Those who do not die from bombardments are dying from hunger. The situation is catastrophic.
Some 15,000 children under the age of 10 in towns across northern Gaza, including Jabalia, Beit Lahia, and Beit Hanun, still remain inaccessible and will likely not receive this dose of the oral polio vaccine due to Israel's attacks and blockade. This all comes as 15 humanitarian groups are describing the situation in northern Gaza as apocalyptic, with top UN officials again warning the entire Palestinian population in North Gaza is, quote, at imminent risk of dying from disease, famine, and violence, unquote. The region has been under an Israeli siege for nearly a month while Israel continues to block life-saving humanitarian aid from entering North Gaza. Aid groups fear the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza will soon worsen as Israel has officially notified the UN that it's cut off ties to UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestine Refugees. We go directly to Deir al-Balah in Gaza, where we're joined by Rachel Cummings, Save the Children's international humanitarian director and team lead there in Gaza. Rachel, can you describe what's happening on the ground and what you're calling for?
Hello, and thanks for the opportunity. We are calling for a ceasefire, a definitive ceasefire. You know, children in Gaza are facing an extraordinary situation. You've described it extremely well in terms of the constant onslaught and bombardment of children in Gaza, in the north, in the middle area, and in the south of Gaza, across the whole of the Gaza Strip. You know, we have over 14,000 children who have been killed. You referenced the 50 children that were killed most recently in an attack in a shelter in the north of Gaza. But this is a constant bombardment and children are dying every single day. There is not enough food in Gaza. There is not enough water and clean water for people in Gaza. The situation is absolutely desperate.
And so what exactly has to happen at this moment? Describe the level of aid you can get and the polio immunization programs being stopped because of the bombardment?
You know, the fact that the centre that was providing the polio vaccines was attacked at this time is unfathomable. It's extraordinary that that event has happened. And of course, that will have a knock-on effect and an impact, not only of the people that were impacted at that time, but then the faith and the trust for women and parents and family members to take their children to health centres. You know, it's very important, obviously, for children to be vaccinated, but with the attacks on healthcare that are persistent, people will have lost faith and trust in the safety or the presumed safety of going to healthcare facilities to receive vaccines. So the knock-on effect on that will be massive. Now, what we need is improved access to humanitarian supplies, bring supplies in to Gaza, and then, of course, safe passage of those supplies and of our teams to be able to then reach the populations who are most in need. Every day, humanitarian workers, Save the Children staff, our partners, and other humanitarian workers across the whole of Gaza are literally risking their lives to deliver life-saving services to children and their families. This is an extraordinary and a very unique situation that we're seeing in Gaza. To be a child in Gaza, and I'm in Deir al-Balah at the moment in the middle area of the Gaza Strip, but it's a miserable existence for children. They're living under this constant fear. They've had no formal education for over 12 months now. So that normality of life, that routine and education provides a degree of protection for children, not only for their physical health, but also for their mental health. We're deeply, deeply concerned about the mental health of 1 million children in Gaza. Every single child in Gaza has been affected by this war.
And if you could comment more on the targeting of humanitarian aid workers and Israel now officially notifying the UN it's cut off ties with UNRWA. How important is UNRWA in getting aid to and being observers on the ground to what's happening there in Gaza, where you are?
It's hard to quantify or describe how important, how essential UNRWA is for the humanitarian endeavour, the humanitarian response in Gaza. But Gaza is, and has been for many decades, of course, wholly reliant and integrated within UNRWA, or rather UNRWA is integrated within the whole of Gaza and the Palestinian population. So as humanitarian agencies, we heavily rely on UNRWA to receive fuel, to support on coordination of access and movement of supplies. So UNRWA are a huge provider of life-saving services. Every day, they're providing over 15,000 consultations in the health facilities. Hundreds of thousands of people are living in the UNRWA-designated shelters that were previous UNRWA schools. Every sort of strand of society is wrapped up with UNRWA. So the cessation of UNRWA in terms of providing humanitarian life-saving support to the population here is extraordinary to even consider.
Rachel Cummings, I want to thank you so much for being with us. Save the Children's International Humanitarian Director and Team Lead in Gaza, speaking to us from Deir al-Balah.
You have a lot invested in caricaturizing and cartoonizing Palestinian resistance factions in our societies, irrationalizing them, turning them into moral monsters.
People argue that Palestine is now like the new social justice trend that many, even in Western countries, are jumping on.
In the case of Piers Morgan, it's not that he's trying to use me to better his sort of journalistic reputation. He's trying to get me arrested.
Do you think that artists do have a moral obligation to take a stand, even if it means risking their careers?
I think one difficulty of being effective, particularly on this issue, is that you can make quite powerful enemies who will seek to harm you.
When it comes to issues like voting or having a say with elections or political leadership, the reality is that the direction that Western countries are taking isn't going to change.
Who has the reasonable position that if you want to improve society, you should be forced to leave it.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode on the TMJ podcast. Today we are speaking with Loki, a British rapper and activist from London whose career as an artist has largely focused on raising awareness about Palestinian liberation as well as a range of other human rights issues.
We're really honored to have you on the TMJ podcast. I really want to start off this interview talking about your career in the music industry. Now, obviously you are a voice, quite literally, that has stood out from a lot of your peers in the music industry. Many now are of the belief that it's starting to become popular and trendy to talk about Palestine, and that it's not as rebellious or as dangerous to be addressing that topic. In many ways, people argue that Palestine is now like the new social justice trend that many, even in Western countries, are jumping on. Now, your career in specific, I would say, has been very different because for over 10 years, you actually have been talking about various issues ranging from Palestine to, Western imperialism to even more domestic issues like police brutality and the refugee crisis. So you have been very vocal for a very long time. But my question to you, the first one, is how much of the hit do you think, or would you say your career has taken for the political views that you've had?
I suppose it depends how you define the concept of cost. So in terms of if I was hoping to obtain sponsorship from major corporations, if I was hoping to obtain a record deal with a major label, one of the big three like Universal, Sony, or Warner, or if I was hoping for support from radio stations, also if I was hoping prior to October 7th for favorable algorithmic treatment, then all of those became not really possible because of the content of my music. Right. However, which you alluded to correctly, I think you also build up trust with your audience when they understand the angle that you're coming at the issue from consistently over decades. I think it's a different type of connection that is formed. So in terms of as a music career, quote unquote, it definitely cut off options within the traditional understanding of the music industry. But even the music industry as it is does not provide long-term reliable employment to the vast majority of people in it. It's a very small, wafer-thin group of people who are then able to make a living for decades off the music. But what it did do, for example, in my case, was open up the opportunity to start working in journalism with Mint Press. It opened up the opportunity to start working for an organization that teaches music courses to refugees in this country also. So actually, it was a launch pad through which I was able to seek other employment and be able to sustain myself in that way. But also it kind of morphed into a form of journalism. Previously, when I first began making music, I was in school. All we had was the radio and the open mics, and I used to go to open mics. You did not have social media. And then social media changed things when MySpace came around. You were able to publish your music and be heard by people. But then things changed also with Facebook and YouTube. I think each platform has had its sort of era in terms of reaching people, and they've all had slightly different dynamics that have played out with them. I think one difficulty of being effective, particularly on this issue, is that you can make quite powerful enemies who will seek to harm you in different ways. And I think you have to be ambidextrous and flexible in the way you work. You have to be slightly more vigilant, I would say, about personal relationships generally, about data, about your movements, about what information you reveal about yourself. You have to be slightly more on the ball and vigilant really about all of those things. because of course you're dealing in something that there is billions invested in maintaining. You're trying to go against the grain in that way. And so I think there's positives and negatives of it, but ultimately it's not, you're not doing it for an understanding of what it will or won't do for your quote unquote career, because the careerist choice has across all these years, particularly I would say during the Corbyn era in the Labour Party. Jeremy Corbyn was the leader of the Labour Party in this country. He was pro-Palestinian, but when he entered into the leadership, there was a massive campaign to shut down, and thousands, probably all in all, pro-Palestinian members of the party were expelled on the basis of them supporting the Palestinians. And so the careerist choice at that time was to support Israel. But also what you've shown with your question is that now there's actually more of at least socially, a cost for being pro-Israel.
And I think it's interesting you mentioned a lot of artists who are actually vocal, not just artists, activists even, realize that at certain points they do have to be vigilant about the things they say. And I think that's also, many would call it being strategic, which is equally important to talk about, because you now have a lot of celebrities or influencers even that are engaging in activism with the work that they do, or I would say selective activism in certain cases. But often they will fall silent on certain controversial issues, one of them, the most recent, being Palestine right now. You have also previously called out a number of other artists for various political reasons. But do you think that those who may choose not to take a stance or not to talk about or not to use their platforms to shed light on these issues, do you think you would consider them to be cowards? Or would you say that being strategic in certain cases is justified? Do you think that artists do have a moral obligation to take a stand, even if it means risking their careers?
I think since the period of time when you had figures like John Lennon funding the IRA and the Black Panthers, there's been a concerted effort in the music industry to demobilize and depoliticize the talent, quote unquote. And I think that unfortunately that has led to at least a few generations of people that have understood, particularly music, as a sort of apolitical space, which in and of itself is a political position, especially when so many things are happening in the society. And I sometimes think about it and I think, well, when you would listen to Marvin Gaye, you could hear the civil rights movement in the United States. When when he's singing What's Going On or Mercy Me, when you're listening to John Lennon, you can hear some of the political context in which he's active in. You can hear the strains of people on the streets of the United States protesting against the Vietnam War. If you were to listen to the last few generations of successful musicians in the mainstream, what could you tell about the period of time? I mean, many of them really went overboard supporting Obama, so perhaps you could tell that there was Obama about to be elected or just elected as president. But other than that, you couldn't tell that the United States had launched the war on terror, which consisted of the dropping of about 46 bombs every single day for 20 years. You couldn't tell that they were launching special forces operations in almost 90 countries, that you were seeing tens of millions of people displaced and millions killed in the wars that the United States was launching. So essentially what I view my music as an attempt to do is also an attempt to document history. And I feel that when you do listen to it, it will tell you something about the context we were living in, both domestically and internationally. And I do think that that is an interesting function for music to play. Whether I think people have a sort of responsibility artistically, well, not necessarily, but I do think that they, as people, ultimately have some of these responsibilities. You know, the
100%.
concept of tax, for example, is an idea of collective responsibility. You are putting into something on the basis that it supposedly will do a greater good and cover some of the burden of others within the society. So we have mechanisms of collective responsibility, but I think the problem is with neoliberalism it has imbued our societies with a really toxic individualism, which is constantly emphasizing these mantras like it's a dog-eat-dog world, every man for himself, all different ways of basically atomizing the society and pushing the person to view themselves as ultimately a unit of enlightened self-interest rather than a part of the wider collective. So, you know, ultimately through my music, I hope to try and bond people to each other and pin people to each other so they realize that ultimately we are invested in each other's situations.
And I think on that same topic, would you say in the kind of activism you've done through your music, as well as outside, you mentioned you were involved with, you know, journalism or, you know, other news organizations, independent news organizations. Would you say there are prominent activists or organizations or even other artists that you believe have failed the Palestinian cause? And what specific things would you say that these failures involve?
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be too keen to point my finger at other musicians as such, because I don't think necessarily that musicians will come at it from a particularly educated perspective. Obviously, you have someone like DJ Khaled who should be saying stuff, who millions of people want to say things, and he's just not. Whether that's related to the label that he's signed to, where you have an individual who has, as CEO, who has been pictured at fundraisers for the Friends of the IDF. It's all possible, you know, these are calculated choices often, particularly on the Palestinian issue, that people make to remain silent. For me, what I've found quite disheartening has been the silence of some of the most prominent post-colonial scholars in England. They are literally nothing to say, some of them, on the issue of Palestine. It's greatly disappointing when you are seeing such a naked example of settler colonialism in Palestine. So for me, my disappointment lies there. And also the system at large. You know, we're talking about individuals here, but the individuals are produced by the system. There's a form of groupthink and sort of instinctive cowardice that is produced at this level of what has happened, you know. And
You're welcome, AC.
You know, I don't understand it. I don't understand it. And I also think ultimately it's short-sighted, because I think in the end, even according to their own narrow self-interest, how can you pretend this hasn't been happening? No one in the world has not seen some of these videos. So you at least have some form of visceral reaction to what you're seeing. You have some sort of natural aversion to the suffering of these people. And for you not to respond to it, I think it says a lot about who you are as a person.
And I think kind of to segue to the next part of the conversation, we see the exact same parallels in the US as well. But one thing that we see a lot, especially from whether it's political scientists or those in academia who have a platform and who are able to be speaking about these things, is when you have certain labels or certain, I guess you would say, government sanctioned ways of thinking that essentially are expected to be the norm in society. And unfortunately, we see that a lot of our academics and our political scientists are falling victim to that as well. Is, for example, you have these blanket terms like terrorists or terrorist organizations or extremists. And many, because of those labels and because that has become the overall paradigm within society, are oftentimes fearful to go against that and to kind of rock the boat, if you will. And speaking about that, I think it's important. One of the most recent examples that has come out is the controversy regarding the Samadun group, which is obviously a solidarity network that exposes a lot of the abuses against Palestinian political prisoners, which has recently been labeled as a terrorist organization by the US and Canada. There was also an incident where its supporters chanted like "Death to Canada," and the US and Israel burned a Canadian flag, which caused a lot of controversy online. You also recently expressed support for them on your own social media. How would you respond to comments that these groups and some of the bold actions that they take are not necessarily helping the Palestinian cause, and that they're labeling as terrorist organizations might be because of some of these bold actions that have ripple effect in the ways that people in society are now going to view, for example, the Palestinian cause in general.
Well, I wouldn't agree with that assertion. I have spoken on Sarmadun platforms. I know them. They are a manifestation of the Palestinian will to practice their right under UN Resolution 3246, which is the right to armed resistance. Sarmadun have not relinquished their willingness to support that right. I think that this is about ticking boxes and trying to marginalize that point of view within Western societies. And it's not the only step that has been taken. Now, if I was somebody who was particularly invested in the idea of traveling to the United States, then I wouldn't make the pronouncement I just made, but I haven't been able to enter the United States the time that I tried and was not able to, and since then have not been able to. So there's clearly some form of internal blacklisting which has been operated regarding me. But no, Sarmadun are part of the Palestinian fabric. You cannot so easily throw them by the wayside. It's just within different societies, different pronouncements mean different things. You have a lot invested in caricaturizing and cartoonizing Palestinian resistance factions in our societies, irrationalizing them, turning them into moral monsters, when ultimately they're an occupied people who are trying to find a way to have freedom. In that context, the statements, I don't view anything that Sarmadun have said or done as particularly harmful to the Palestinian cause at all. I see them as defending the Palestinian right to armed resistance.
One thing we've seen happen actually recently in Europe has been happening, but I think recently we've been seeing a lot more of it, is several activists being detained without legal process through the Terrorism Act. And this happened recently to Richard Medhurst, the freelance journalist, but it also happened to the Palestine Action activists over Elbit Systems, which you have also spoken at great length at different interviews. So we've seen this very concerning level of journalists, activists being treated as terrorists, essentially. What do you think about this, and have you experienced similar treatment yourself?
Yes, I've been arrested for political reasons, and I've gone through the process of fighting in court. On this particular issue, Palestine, I view any type of persecution that someone faces as a badge of honor. I don't view it as something worthy of fear, particularly in the context we're in Britain now. And I don't view it as something that, if brought before a jury, would be particularly successful. 7 out of 10 citizens of this country support the Palestinians and are against Israel. Large section of this society is anti-Zionist. If you're brought in front of a court for an alleged crime which pertains to Israel and its genocide in Gaza, you are far more likely to have a supportive jury, and you're even likely to have a judge who might see things the same way as you. So these are not open and shut cases. These are attempts at intimidation, attempts at demobilization, but ultimately we haven't really seen them succeed. And when those cases will go before the court, I think it's more likely that they will fall apart. You have to remember, Palestine Action, since 2020, its founding, has launched around 500 operations against Israeli arms factories and sites supporting those Israeli arms factories in this country over these years. How is it that there's not more than 16 people in prison? And actually, 10 of those 16 people in prison are being held on remand, which means they have not been found guilty of any crime. Right. They've been arrested and charged. And so ultimately, for that level of effectiveness that that Palestine Action has had, successfully shut down 3 factories, well, 2 factories and 1 site, an office belonging to Israel's largest arms company in this country, is an unsuccess. You haven't success like that, not only in this country, but anywhere else in the Western world. So clearly Palestine Action have done something right. But the question is really what kind of maneuvers and tricks the state, in conjunction with Israel, it seems, will try and use to derail this movement, which again is just an expression of, it's the tip of the spear of the popular feeling. It's the water that breaks down the rock. That's what Palestine Action is. And, you know, these people who are in prison now, the point of putting them in prison is so they start thinking about themselves. But we receive writings from them. And in all the writings, they're talking about Palestine. So they're still thinking about Palestine while they're sitting in jail after almost 70 days. So it's not working. And people are not inherently selfish as neoliberal capitalism would like us to believe.
Right. And I think as hopeful as this sounds, I'm going to kind of take that devil's advocate position and say perhaps it's like that more so in Europe. I would say in the US, we still have, as much as it's definitely true that the sentiments, public sentiment, including people who are, you know, non-Muslim. So you have like Western audiences that are very much becoming in support and realizing what's really happening. We've seen a lot of that reflected in the encampments that took place across the country here, as well as the protests, which really haven't died down even a year after. But you still have a lot of people who are facing consequences for being active, whether it's students getting arrested or people losing their jobs or facing the consequences of their activism. It is still very much a big part of this society, at least I would say. And I think maybe to some extent true about Britain and in Europe in general. Would you agree with that? Or would you say, at least in the UK, the sentiments have become so supportive that to some degree you could say that the consequences are not as serious anymore?
Well, if these are not consequences, these are attempts at state repression, and they're not effective. They're not effective at all. I mean, in the United States, I think there's a fear because the police shoot people in a way that police don't do here. So I think people are less likely to take that kind of activity because the state really is stronger and more adept at the use of violence for coercion. So the United States is a different beast that I don't really know enough about, and I'm sure it differs from state to state. But in terms of here, they're not slowing down what we've put into motion.
That's really good to hear. And I'm curious to know if you have that same view about the mainstream media there. I know you were also recently on Piers Morgan, and it was an amazing interview that a lot of Muslims especially were very proud of. But you also had some criticisms that always comes out with Muslims participating in Western media. As someone who went on the show and someone who is viewing the state of British journalism, at least, how do you respond to those comments that kind of talk a little bit about whether it is truly effective to have these pro-Palestinian voices come, or whether they're just kind of being used as to kind of say, you know, this is us doing journalism right? And do you think that would you say that British journalism, in that sense, mainstream media especially, is starting to change in its coverage of issues like Palestine?
No, it has changed quite considerably. You've got people that did the Israel lobby's bidding for many years who are now aghast at what's happening in Gaza. In the case of Piers Morgan, it's not that he's trying to use me to better his sort of journalistic reputation. He's trying to get me arrested. That is the point of him repeatedly focusing on the same question, and the reason that he does that with people he describes as the extremists. So you're walking into what is a trap that he's setting for you. But of course, you can't be open-handed with people who are not open-handed with you. So as long as you go in there well-researched and knowing what you want to say, I think being put on a platform in front of millions of people potentially is not a bad thing, especially when you are essentially blacklisted from other platforms of a similar size.
That's interesting to say. So would you say then in general, aside from just Piers Morgan and your participation on his show, would you say then that the rest of British media in the past year or even in the years leading up to today has done a better job of covering these issues?
Than they used to?
Right.
Well, I mean, I couldn't make a blanket statement. I think the BBC is worse. I think Channel 4 is better. I think LBC is better. I think ITV is better.
Right.
Yeah, the Murdoch media, which Morgan is a part of, is terrible, is disgusting, is frothing at the mouth for more genocide. The BBC wraps it up in sort of PR language and tries to obscure the truth. But the rest of them are actually taking stories from Palestinian journalists in Gaza. And it's such an undeniable truth when they see the scale of destruction that their coverage is starting to reflect that.
One common response that actually pro-Palestinian supporters and activists receive when they do call out their governments and officials, whether it's on mainstream media or just, themselves on their social media and their pages, especially when it's about calling out their governments and their officials for their backing of Israel financially, militarily, even ideologically, is okay. So if you do have these grievances and if you're so vocal about them, then why do you even live in these Western countries? Why don't you move to, those same places? And the debate is now not just coming from, mainstream media and pro-Israelis, but a lot of it is coming within the Muslim community itself, where they're asking, how are you justifying this with your taxes, for example, funding this? Or for example, even in my previous interview with Adi, she asked me that as well. She's like, do you guys realize that a lot of what's happening to people in our region, in Lebanon, and Palestine, and West Asia, is coming from, the funding that people like yourselves in these Western countries are indirectly and directly funding? So as an artist and an activist, hearing these kind of debates surrounding the issue, how would you respond to those comments?
So when William Cuffy and the Chartists, and these were people who did not own land and did not own property, wanted the right to vote for parliamentary representation, they mobilized for 300 years, and their struggle entailed being arrested, jailed, it entailed then being massacred at Peterloo. But it also entailed William Cuffy being arrested and deported to the penal colony of Tasmania. Now, this idea of if you don't like it here, or if you want to change something about the society, you should leave, it doesn't come from members of the public. And I think the framing of the question is kind of strange. It comes from the state and the powerful, because they are the ones that have the power to deport people for their views in some cases. But in the case of William Cuffy, it wasn't only William Cuffy, it was the first group of people they called the Tolpuddle Martyrs. These were people that mobilized for the right of collective bargaining, the forming a trade union in order to advocate for their interests against the employer. What happened to them? They were sent to a penal colony in Australia. So this very, very, very conservative, reactionary, unfortunate suggestion that if you have some sort of hope to improve the society, therefore you should leave the society because you hope to improve it. I mean, I'm not sure why that point of view would be given any respect to even raise it in an interview, to be honest, because it's not a legitimate point of view. It's a point of view which is backed by Trumpite rubbish and propaganda. Who has the reasonable position that if you want to improve society, you should be forced to leave it? Either accept society the way it is or leave it. I mean,
100%.
it's a strange question to ask, to be honest with you.
And I think the reason it's so strange is because you have a lot of rhetoric that is coming out that's similar to this, where, for example, this is actually relevant to our next question, but a lot of people in this country as well have realized that if we do truly want to make that impact, it's almost as if even when it comes to issues like voting or having a say with elections or political leadership, the reality is that the direction that Western countries are taking isn't going to change. And you also mentioned this in interviews where, the fact that, the UK or the US do have these paradigms in place, the Zionist paradigm and, funding Israel, that in itself on a political level won't change. So you actually do see people, I would kind of argue, especially if they are coming from certain countries, let's say like Iran, even. I'm Iranian, so I can speak to Iranians, but Lebanon, Palestine, a lot of it comes from realizing that being in these, Western countries and having hope for that change to some people is a lost cause. And a lot of times the question becomes, is it more effective to then be within West Asian countries where making that change or, being present is more valuable even than being here and expecting, for example, an election or the entire society to in the future change direction, which we know is a reality that's far-fetched to say the least.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily assume it's completely far-fetched. I mean, while military to military relations are very deeply entrenched, history tells an interesting story. When you look at the case of the Chartists, for instance, it was 1839 when they were massacred in the street. Less than 100 years later, you had a situation where, because of World War I, these concessions were forced into action. Children didn't change corporal punishment. Children were beaten in schools here. They had to go on marches and on strike from school in order to change that policy. It certainly would have seemed far-fetched at a certain point. Apartheid South Africa, it would have seemed very far-fetched for things to reach a different kind of arrangement, but they did. Not to say that arrangement is perfect, but I think ultimately, if you are somebody who's grown up here and has a presence here, why should you be given such an ultimatum that no other group of people would? If anybody else wants to improve this society, they're never given the ultimatum of, well, if you don't like it, leave. It's kind of just an odd ultimatum to be given.
It's definitely a very odd ultimatum. And I would say, again, I personally don't agree with that being given as a solution. In fact, if anything, I think being offered that, and the reason I asked that question is because it's very outrageous to have to hear that, especially as Muslim.
I haven't heard it. I've heard it from maybe one or two YouTube comments in the entirety of when I've been. I don't think it's that common. I think it's a small. It's a small fringe. You'd get it with the Trump types, but
right. And it's also coming not just from the Trump types, but Israel supporters, pro-Israelis in general. A lot of, especially, it might be different in Europe, but we have had very similar sentiments, especially in protests and encampments across colleges in the US. And the reason I say that comes out is because a lot of times you would have pro-Israeli students. These would be some of the tactics that they would use speaking to pro-Palestinian students who were organizing these protests and who were engaging in these encampments and calling out their university leadership and government leadership, especially when it comes to military funding, especially when it comes to universities funding or supporting Israel. And that's kind of one of the reasons why encampments here were so big, is that students were demanding that divestment from Israel. So it might be that it's different in the UK, but these are sentiments that do exist within at least American society, aside from just comments on YouTube and social media. You hear that coming. I wouldn't say it's as frequent as a lot of other forms of, hate that are spewed at people who do engage in activism, but it's definitely there. And I think it's important to recognize and speak about as well, because as outrageous as it sounds, it is a reality that many people who do engage in these kinds of activism face and hear as a result of what they're doing. One other thing that I think is important to touch on is, you mentioned, yes, there are ways, and I think I completely agree with you, where citizens of Western countries should have hope in the things that they are able to do in their countries to benefit the situation. You endorsed the, as you mentioned earlier, Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn in the UK elections, which is a move that a lot of British Muslims made because of his stance on Palestine when he was running. Many are drawing parallels to Jill Stein, who is the Green Party candidate, and a lot of Muslims have also been considering her for the upcoming elections because of her pro-Palestine stances. How hopeful are you, since you also brought this up, that the way we are going to see that change will come from political leadership?
It won't, because part of their job is to basically toe the line, provide PR for what the military wants to do, and the US intelligence services. The political elite have a very narrow space to move within the United States generally. So that's why you just don't get examples like Jeremy Corbyn really produced. I mean, Bernie Sanders was obviously the closest, but he's still quite far from Corbyn. So yeah, it's definitely a case of the Sheldon Wallen inverted totalitarianism in my view. It's a very small Overton window, as they call it. The horizon of political possibility is minimal.
So then what would you say would be the alternatives that especially Muslims living in these Western countries should consider as more effective?
In the United States?
You can speak to the UK if that's something you're more familiar
with. Well, we've proven in the British context that direct action achieves more than political campaigning. We've proven it.
What forms of direct action would you think that would include?
Well, I mean, you can see it. If you look on Palestine Action's pages, you'll be able to see what we've done.
Right. Palestine Action is definitely one of them, but would you say there's other ways for that activism to be taking place that's also very effective compared to changes in political leadership?
To be honest, in recent history, Palestine Action has been the only one that's actually achieved victories in this country. I think real journalism, which interrogates power and studies power and looks at the way it arranges itself within a society, I think that's also can be effective, because without the information, people will not be able to act effectively.
Kind of in closing, you have also traveled to Palestine several times to perform, for example, fundraising shows to help rebuild the Gaza Strip, or even just humanitarian aid missions. What were those experiences like for you?
What I saw in Gaza, for example, was a big deal, is a big deal, and it was a period of time on the way to the genocide of where we are today, the sort of continuous Nakba. Yeah, there were beautiful people that I met there, and people in the West Bank also who I have lifelong friendship with. And I just hope that this repulsive genocidal juggernaut of the Israeli military can be held back in some way from destroying these people's lives.
Thank you so much, Loki, for being with us today. I really appreciate you giving us your time.
No problem.
Chat. Chat. Is he from London? I didn't know of him until this. Yeah. He's from he's from London. I play a lot of his music. Yeah. "10 hours, baby, let's go." Where are we gonna go? I'm thinking in Kairos. This exclamation point raid out and exclamation point sub raid. Back. I think I'm gonna try to come back around like after fighting Yale. Yeah, I'll be good. Drink some water, take some meds. I love you.